Hey guys. This is part 26 of What If Naruto Was Sealed and Woke Up After 2000 Years. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 62. Could we have the context, please? Location: Citadel. Nihilus waited silently by the door, watching the three counselors waiting. They were in an apartment in one of the lower wards, normally a place they wouldn't be caught dead in. Which meant it was perfect for meetings best kept off the official record. Such as what was about to happen. The door opened and 4 people walked in. He knew who they were instantly. The Asari half made of metal was the Huntress, the tribe's top field agent. The remaining 3 were the tribe's leaders. They walked in confidence, assured of what they were coming into. "Ah, counselors," the Turian said. Please wait," Counselor Tevos said, cutting him off. "We don't have time for pleasantries." The leaders were surprised but didn't look too concerned. "Is something the matter?" the Huntress asked. She looked decidedly bored with everything but stayed respectful due to who she was talking to. "Yes, there is," Counselor Sparatus said. He looked at all 4 of them. When the tribe was established to obtain and study chakra, this body was well aware that it was allowing actions that could be seen as dangerous, possibly even treasonous. Yet for the sake of unlocking the secrets of chakra, we allowed it. "Yet," said Counselor Valorn, "it seems that we have given the tribe too much leeway. As such, you have left the entirety of the council, on unstable ground." The tribe heads looked at one another, unsure of what was happening. "What do you mean, counselors?" the Asari asked. Counselor Tevos answered. "We mean your decision to attack Naruto Uzumaki, buying him from the Shadow Broker, and then hunting him through the Traverse." She did not look her usual self, calm and poised. Actually, she looked angry and almost embarrassed. "What were you thinking?" The fact they were in trouble was starting to dawn on the leaders. "Counselor, we were following our objective, to obtain and study chakra." "So you went after an actual living legend of the Alliance? One of our Spectre agents? The man who saved this citadel from Saren's attack?" She didn't yell, but her voice did raise in danger with each question asked. "Not to mention your little war with the Akatsuki, a war that allowed Commander Uzumaki to join on their side." The leaders winced. That struck a nerve. The Huntress looked at the counselors. "This has been going on for years. Why are you complaining now?" she asked. "You didn't complain when we got the guy or when we went after him." She wasn't insolent, but her respect was paper thin. "If it was kept discreet and able to be swept under the rug, then yes, we didn't complain," Counselor Valorn replied. "But that is no longer the case. Recently, Counselor Udina brought to our attention the full scope of the tribe's activities. He threatened to let the whole galaxy to know what the tribe has done if it was not taken care of. As of this moment, the tribe of Athame is shut down and expunged. It never existed." "Agent Nihilus," Counselor Sparatus said. Nihilus raised his weapon. His first shot took out the Huntress. She was the most dangerous of the 4, but her arrogance allowed her to walk in with her shields down. She fell, body half-turned. His next 3 shots took out the leaders, 1 for each. They were dead before they had a chance. The counselors looked at the bodies momentarily before looking at him. "Are the rest in position?" Tevos asked. He nodded. "At your command, Spectre agents will clean house. Consider it given." He turned and left the apartment, activating his Omni tool and sending out a signal. He was glad that it had come to this. It had been a surprise to see Naruto on horizon. Like the rest of the galaxy, Nihilus thought he died when the Normandy had been attacked. But after Horizon, he and Ashley got suspicious and they started digging. Much to their annoyance, they were repeatedly stonewalled. What they could find didn't set their minds at ease, yet it seemed like their investigation was going nowhere. It was only when Udina brought the matter to the other counselors that it felt like they got somewhere. Not only did he have evidence that the tribe existed, he had names, locations, ships, and details. Most importantly, they had captured Naruto and hunted him after he escaped. Faced with such evidence, the rest of the council couldn't dismiss it. What Nihilus also knew was that Udina also had evidence about the tribe's war with the Akatsuki and the Akatsuki. Despite what the council might want, those details were going to be leaked to the media. How, Nihilus didn't know, and that was because he wanted plausible deniability, which was also why Ashley was no longer working with him. What he did know was that both organizations were going to burn, and he was looking forward to it. As he left the building, he thought back to the 4 people he just killed. How couldn't they have known they were about to be executed? Wasn't the fact they walked into an apartment covered in tarps obvious enough? Location Earth. Naruto awoke slowly to the sound of seagulls. His eyes refused to open, at first. Eventually they did, and they greeted his room as the morning light poured in. He slowly sat up, swinging his legs out. He sat on the edge, looking at the room. He knew technically he was supposed to be a prisoner, but this was probably one of the nicer cells he could have been in. Of course, calling it a cell would be wrong, he thought to himself. He arrived at Earth and landed on Sempervigilavi in the middle of the night. He fully expected to be put in a cell, but instead brought to this nicely furnished room with a comfortable bed. That was 2 days ago, and he was still getting used to the idea that he was back on Earth. After being away for 2,000 years, he was finally back. He was a little angry because he was sure Anderson and Hackett took his words a little too generally. They must have thought that home was Earth. He meant it as Konoha. He wanted to go back to his home village. When he felt fully awake, he stood up and went to the window. The view outside was nice. He could see the clear water of the sea and had a good view of the beach down below too. There was no one on the beach yet, but he was certain, if given time during the day, people would start showing up. When he first heard and read about Sempervigilavi, he had a picture in his mind of a gray, bleak island that was a fortress in all but name. He was quite surprised when he found that since the island was built close to the equator, it was sunny and had warm weather practically year-round. The place was more than a fortress. It was city in and of itself, full of civilians who lived without ever becoming Marines. It was a beautiful place, both in scenery and in life. Damn, Shikaku said proudly. My last Jinchuriki did some good work here. Would that be the one who you made stay up all night every night because he was afraid that you would possess him? Asked Isabu pointedly. They all knew how the Tanuki treated his Jinchurikis, especially Gaara. That is beside the point. Not really. It wasn't just Gaara who did this, Naruto said. They had seen the statues of the island's creators in the courtyard below. Gaara and Mei Terumi were only 2 of the creators. The other 3 were from the frontier and Midgard. But Shikaku had the right of it. What Gaara did here was damn good work. His stomach rumbled, signaling that it was time for food. There wasn't a kitchen in the room, so he was going to have to go down to the cafeteria, like he had yesterday. He dressed himself in civilian clothes. His hand stopped as it was about to touch his side, looking for the gun that wasn't there. His Black Hawks and his armor had been confiscated since he had been taken into custody. He didn't even have his robe. He didn't object to the removal, but he did unconsciously reach for them sometimes. He left his room and went down to the cafeteria. As soon as he walked through the door into that large room, all noise went silent and the eyes fell onto him. All the soldiers in the room and stood up and saluted him. Good morning, Lord Naruto, they said as one, even the officers. The civilians didn't do it, but they did look at him with wide eyes. Some people might have found that flattering. Not him. It was disconcerting every time he saw it. Guys, you really need to stop doing that, he said to them all. They didn't reply, still standing at attention. It was a good thing he knew to get them to stop it. He sighed in resignation and ordered, at ease. They stopped saluting. He grabbed a tray and started for the food line. The people in the line started to move out of his way, but he stopped still. There's no need to do that, he told them all. Get back in line. I'll keep my place. My lord, began one of the Marines. He cut him off. I insist. You were here first. They all hesitantly got back into line and he stayed in place at the back. When are these people going to stop treating me like you're a living, breathing, walking legend? Kurama asked him. Well, yeah? Do you really want me to answer that question? No. He knew that the fox would answer to the full amount of sarcasm he could use in his voice. He didn't need that for such an obvious question. He went down the line, following the person in front of him. The chefs didn't treat him like the soldiers did. They treated him like any other customer. It was something he appreciated. He left the line with something that was called the full frontier breakfast. There's a lot of bread on this tray, he thought to himself as he carried it to an empty table. Kurama thought he was exaggerating. You're fine. Given your appetite, that's enough. I'm not complaining about the size. No, just about the food, he said back. He sat down at the table. I'm not even complaining, he protested as he picked up his fork. Of course you are. Saiken eyed the food as Naruto picked at a hash brown. I don't know. It looks better than the full Midgard lunch. Even for you, that was a lot of meat. Tell me about it, Naruto said, eating the hash brown. So, asked Matatabi, how does it taste? He savored the flavor as he chewed and swallowed. Little salty, he finally said. Maybe it's an acquired taste. You'll have plenty of time to get used to it, said Sun bluntly. You are here until the Alliance says otherwise. His mood soured slightly. No need to remind me about that. He knew it all too well. He might on a beautiful paradise island, but the fact remained the same. He was imprisoned here. Are you going to do anything about it? I'm going to finish my breakfast first, he replied as he bit into a thick piece of toast. I'll go from there. He finished the toast and reached for a piece of bacon. His eyes roamed the cafeteria. It was a bustling place. People sat at long tables, talking to each other as they ate their food. The food line disappeared behind one wall down close to the exit and reappeared on the other side. When people were done with their food, they would take it to the wall that stood between the food line's entrance and the exit. It was full of stacked trays that rotated out of sight once they were full. There was something else that he noticed as he ate. People were looking at him. Some were obvious about it, and some were not, but there were people watching him. It made him wonder what they were hoping to see as they looked at him. Perhaps it was the same thing they hoped to see whenever they saluted him. Whatever it was, he didn't care. He was more concerned about his food. He noticed that people were started to surround his table as he finished his meal. They didn't come all at once, one or two at a time. He didn't react until he was finished eating. He learned a long time ago never to waste food. He looked up and saw a lot of redheads staring at him. I'm going to take a guess and say that you are all Uzumaki clansmen? He asked them all. Some of them were dressed like Marines, others were in civilian clothes. We are, my lord, the one closest to him said. He raised a finger, stopping him. You, what's your name? He asked him. Shinji Uzumaki, my. Stop right there, he said, cutting him off. He eyed them all. Let's get one thing straight here. He could see their backs stiffen, like they were waiting for the lecture that was going to come. Instead of that, he grinned and declared, screw the my lord crap. We're family. Call me Naruto. Now sit down. They looked like they wanted to sit down but were unsure of it. Come on, you came over here to talk to me. You might as well sit for it. They all sat down around him. The positioning of them all made him look like he was sitting at the head of the table. Thank you, Shinji started, only to catch himself. Thank you, Naruto. Think nothing of it, Shinji. He looked around the table at them all. The faces were all different, and so were the hairstyles. The only thing that was the same for them all was the redness of their hair. He stood out being the only blonde amongst them. So, is this the welcoming committee, or do you guys have some questions for me? A little bit of both, a woman with a bun in her hair said from the far end. He looked down at her. And what's your name? Karen, she answered. He took a closer look at her. She wore the same gray shirt as the other military men at the table. Her hair was neat and straight, although that might be because of the bun. Her eyes were a shade of blue that bordered on green. Named for who I think you're named for? He asked her. She nodded. Yes. It's one of the family names. So, I've got a question about the latest Biju album. Yes, I was in it, he answered. Just how long were people going to ask that question? That's it, asked another military Uzumaki. He was one of the middle-aged ones at the table. And you are? Ashina Uzumaki, he answered. I'm Kushina's cousin. Naruto arched an eyebrow at that. I'd say that we're all cousins here, wouldn't you? It earned a smattering of chuckles from everyone, including Ashina. Good point, he admitted. I met Kushina while she was hauling some equipment. I offered to help. She said yes. We got to talking. Sounds like something that usually ends up in the bedroom, a young woman said mischievously. He frowned at her, so glad that he wasn't eating anymore. Okay, first off, EW. Second off, you are? Anoka, she replied, still grinning mischievously. Shikaki knew that kind of grin meant one thing and one thing only. Ask her if she's gotten any, he whispered to Naruto. What? No. That was just wrong, not to mention rude. He might have been taught by Jiraiya, but not even he was that gauche. Not like that. There's no other way but that. He ignored the tanuki for the humans around him. I helped her carry the equipment to the studio where they were recording the album. I met the band, helped them set up. She offered to let me stay while they started and I accepted. I listened to what they were playing and started padding along. Padding along? Anoka asked, the grin coming back to her face. He looked at her pointedly. Whatever you're thinking about, that's not it. Then what was it? Please enlighten us. Shinji looked exasperated at her. Sorry about her, Naruto, he said. My cousin's always been like this. We thought that getting her into the military would stop it, but it doesn't seem to have done anything. She gave him an affronted look. That's because I'm off duty, Shinji. I'm allowed to be like this around family. He rolled his eyes and she grinned widely. Anyway, said Naruto, wanting to get back on track. I patted my hands on my legs to the beat. Han, the Quarian drummer, heard me doing that and thought it added to the song. I was told to step in and keep going. Next thing I know, I'm helping them play through the entire album and jammed through a couple of old songs I knew. Honestly, he didn't really think anything of it once the day was done. He said goodbye to the band and went on his way. He didn't think that they would actually go with what he added or even put the songs he gave them on the album. So that's what the bonus tracks were, Hiro said. He nodded. Now I've got a question for you all. How did you guys know that it was me who helped with the album? They didn't put my name on it, did they? Considering they were all using the titles of his tenants as stage names, he didn't think they would put his name out. They all looked at each other, surprised. Have you not seen the album yet? Ashina asked him. He shook his head. No, I've been busy. They didn't know what he had been up to since he escaped the Normandy, and until he was told otherwise, he was going to keep his mouth shut on it. They don't have my face on it, do they? No, but they did put in a special guest appearance for Jubi. He didn't know what to say to that. Ah, I see, he finally said. That's what you're going with? Kurama asked. What else can I say? It's nice and tasteful? Saiken thought it was better than what he had said. Say that next time. If any of the Uzumakis around him felt that what he said was the wrong thing, they didn't remark on it. Either way, said Hiro. We're all proud of her. She said that she wanted to bring together a band with everyone in the galaxy, and she did it. The first time we got the news their music was continually reaching high in the Hot 100, her father couldn't have looked prouder. Hot 100? Asked Naruto, confused. They all stared at him like they couldn't believe that he had said that. Shinji realized what was happening and quickly corrected it. The Hot 100 is the galactic ranking for all music that's produced. The closer someone gets to number 1, the more popular it is. Oh, I get it. He knew that the group had been doing well and now he had even more proof. Alright then, any more questions? I've got one, Anoka said. Hiro groaned, oh boy. Shut up, Hiro. She looked back at Naruto. Is it true that yesterday when they were doing your medical checkup, you asked for any married women if they could leave the room? All eyes fell on him, and he felt embarrassed. Unfortunately, yes, he said. Why? Asked a woman. She was a civilian and one of the younger ones at the table. If he had to hazard a guess, she was in her early 20s. Your name? He asked her. Emmy, she answered. Well, it had to do with the last medical checkup I had. Thinking about it now just made it more embarrassing. What was he thinking when he opened his mouth? You weren't, as usual, Kurama said bluntly. I didn't say anything to you, he told the fox. He shrugged his shoulders, tails lashing lazily. You didn't have to. So, Anoka said, very interested now, what happened during your last checkup? He couldn't look her in the eyes. Can we not talk about this? He suddenly wished that he still had some food left to eat. It would make for a better distraction. No. Come on, spill the details. Shikaku could see all the eyes of everyone on his Jinchuriki. He knew the look they had in their eyes. He saw on Naruto's face all the time. They're not going to give up, Naruto, he told the blonde. You might as well tell them. He's right, Gyuki agreed. They've got your look. Maybe it's less of his look and more of an Uzumaki look, Sun suggested. Kurama thought about it and decided it made sense. He had seen that same look Naruto wore on Kushina too. It was a look that proclaimed, I'm too stubborn and hard-headed about this subject, so you might as well give up and give me what I want. Naruto saw the looks too. Sheesh, is this what it's like when I look at people like that? He asked. Yes, all 9 Biju answered. He really wished that he had some food still. The last checkup I had been during the war. Tsunade was busy, so her team, many of which were women, did it. He could still feel their stares on him when he was told to stand against the wall with his arms spread wide. When they told me to take off my shirt, I could hear the air hissing out from their mouths. It was like I was standing in a room of snakes. Come on, Emi said in protest. You've got to be kidding. You've got to forgive Emi, Anoka told him. She's an emerging feminist. It gets on our nerves sometimes. Shut up, Anoka. You first, Emi, she fired back. Honestly, you shouldn't pass up the chance to ogle the meat if you can. She looked back at Naruto. No offense. How could he be offended at that? Don't worry about it, he told her. That's what they did to me. Emi rolled her eyes. You must be joking. He looked at the girl, for it seemed like she was more a girl than a woman. I'm not. I'm certain that a checkup doesn't require me to lose my pants and be on the verge of losing my underwear. She blanched. What? Are you kidding? Isabu asked. I wish, he told the turtle. They told me to do that. Since I didn't have kind of medical knowledge, I figured that it was supposed to be like that. I was tipped off that something wasn't normal by the fact they were a little grabby than usual, and their fingers lingered. If I listened hard enough, I could hear some of the older women repeat that they were married. He saw how Emi was getting more and more disgusted. Would it help if I told you that one of the more grabby nurses was a guy? He asked. Say what now? She asked back. He nodded. Yeah, it was a male nurse. I found later that after the checkup, he started dating other guys. All because you apparently have a great body? She said, completely in disbelief. Anoka eyed him up and down. There's nothing apparently about his body, she declared with a grin. Everyone else at the table looked as disturbed as they felt. Anoka, said Shinji, offended at her implications. Lay off, Shinji. I'm stating the facts. The man is right there. Naruto coughed audibly, making them stop. Still here, people, he said, looking at them both. They fell silent and looked a little embarrassed at being called out so. In any case, I think it wasn't just my body that got their attentions. I went in there, thinking they probably thought of me some kind of badass, mysterious shinobi, or maybe even uncaring shinobi. I wanted them to know I wasn't that kind of person. So I talked to them, related to them, let them see I was just another person. The guy I mentioned had been dumped by his girlfriend the day before. I talked to him, made him see that there were other people out there, and it wasn't the end of the world. I talked to all of them of that. And in doing so, you failed to see how they were eyeing you like you were a piece of prime meat that was perfectly seasoned and cooked, Kurama said. He ignored the fox. There wasn't a point in beating an old bush, even if it was his oldest tenant's favorite pastime. Anoka smiled in triumph. Now they all knew why the checkup went like that. Not only did their ancestor clearly have a body that shaped to have everything a woman wanted and possibly more, along with killer blue eyes and a smile that could probably charm the pants off anyone, he wasn't narcissistic about it all. He was humble and almost dismissive about his looks, thinking of them as not that important. He talked to others and tried to help them with their problems any way he could. Kami, if he wasn't my ancestor, I would so date him, she thought to herself. That's when she realized something. Technically speaking, Naruto wasn't her ancestor. Oh sure, he came from the same clan as she did, just a ways back further, but he never sired any children that would have helped made the clan grow. So, she could possibly date him. A sudden pain erupted from her foot. She didn't yelp, but it came close. She looked to her right. Ashina looked innocently, but she saw the flicker to her. What was that for? She hissed through her teeth. Don't even think about it, Anoka, he whispered to her, his lips barely moving. About what? She asked back, keeping her face neutral. Trying to date Naruto, he told her. That's just wrong. I wasn't thinking it. Right, he replied, not believing her for a second. And I'm not a eunuch. He had a big family with 5 kids, the youngest just entering preschool. She frowned slightly, but he remained neutral. All right, fine, she said, giving up. I was thinking about it. But I wasn't serious. I don't care. You shouldn't have thought about it in the first place. Come on, man. Look at him. He did, and he could admit it when there was an attractive man around. Naruto made the words seem a little understated. But he was happily straight and married. The fact remains the same. Alright, I'll stop. She glared at her big brother. I hate you sometimes. You know that, right? He just smiled back. Love you too, sis. So, Emi asked Naruto, how did the entire thing end? He answered, Sakura came in just as they were about to tell me to strip off the underwear. One look on her face and I knew that whatever was supposed to happen in a checkup, this wasn't it. She went after me first, asking what the hell was happening. I answered honestly, telling her it was a checkup. She groaned, kicked the nurses out of the room, and told me, Naruto, how many medical checkups have you had that required you to take off more than your shirt? Everyone at the table busted out laughing at that. People at other tables started looking their way to see what was so funny. Naruto leaned back in his chair and waited for them to stop laughing. He felt a little proud that he was able to make them laugh with a story like that. Even Emi was able to laugh, and it looked she would have been the hardest to do so. Did that, Hiro try to say through his laughter? Did she really say that? She did, he said with a nod. And from then on, I never had a checkup without Tsunade, Sakura, or Ino in the room. I think you're forgetting to mention something else, Kurama said pointedly. He wasn't. They didn't need to know that Sakura gave him a once-over before telling him to put his clothes back on. I've got a question, asked the teenage girl. I'm Suzy. Suzy? Repeated Naruto, wanting to make sure he heard that right. My mother married a frontiersman, she explained. He shouldn't be surprised, given this day and age. People were marrying other people from other villages before he went under, and now people were marrying people who weren't even the same species. Why should it be a surprise that people were marrying people from other countries? Looking at the other clansmen around and seeing how they didn't react cemented it. Alright, Suzy, what's your question? Were you really in a love triangle with Sasuke and Sakura along with Hinata and Kiba too? Suzy, that's not really a question we should ask, Anoka said, looking down the table at her. She was confused. But why? She asked. You didn't have a problem asking your question. She's got you there, Anoka, Shinji said with a grin. She glared at him. Shut up, Shinji. Naruto wasn't really paying attention to them. He was more focused on her question. The last time he talked about that with someone was back on Omega, with Maya. It was still awkward. Are you going to answer her? Gyuki asked him. Not on that, he replied. That was private. Shikako instantly protested. Oh, come on. You did it before. It was with a teammate, and she brought it up. And little Miss Suzy is family. That's not a reason. He didn't even know her. Sorry, Suzy, he told the girl. But I would rather keep that answer to myself. Ah. She whined. Anoka looked sternly at her. He said no, Suzy. Leave it. She glanced apologetically back at Naruto. Sorry, she's a bit of a love triangle fan. That was probably something he didn't need to hear. Next question, he said instantly. Have you thought about helping the show Shinobi? Shinji asked. I'm sure they would love what you had to offer. Everyone nodded in agreement, and there were murmurings of it being a good idea. Naruto wasn't quite sure about it. Do you mean like acting? I don't think I'm that convincing of an actor. Bullshit, Gyuki said instantly. Absolutely bullshit, Shikaku agreed. Utter bullshit, Kurama declared with the rest nodding in agreement. Their Jinchuriki was quite the actor. He was able to trick the people against into thinking he was nothing but an idiot. It was why he was able to beat the huntress every single time. But Shinji shook his head. No, not acting. Helping out with casting and such, he explained. Now that was something Naruto could do. The last time he heard about the show, they were at the end of the Third Shinobi World War. Are they close to getting to my generation? He asked, wanting to be sure. They sure are, Emi said instantly. The next season will start with how Orochimaru plans to invade Konoha and everything surrounding it. That sounded a lot more complex than it should have been. Then again, maybe it wasn't. When he was a genin, the invasion had been so sudden and abrupt, happening right in the middle of the Chunin exam finals. He never asked how it all happened, where the troops were stationed or how they were able to get into position without anyone noticing. Maybe they would show that in the next season. Well, if I could offer my help to them, I would love to, he finally said. But I see two problems with it. What problems? Ashina asked him. For a start, the odds of them thinking it would actually be me if I call them are kinda low, right? They might think it's a prank call. He had a feeling that since he got out, these people might have gotten a lot of calls like that. Or they were that cynical already. But Shinji smiled. Not if I call them first and have you nearby, they won't. Okay, so that was out. The second problem I see is they already have professionals who help with such matters. I can't think of a scenario of where I would be needed over them. I do. What's that? It's true these guys know what they are doing, but you've got something that'll beat them every time. His grin got even wider. They're doing their casting based off research of the people. You would actually know them. You would know exactly what to look for in these actors. He had a point. Naruto would know what to look for in the actors who wanted to portray his friends. Hell, I would be able to pick out the right person to play me. He thought to himself. It was an interesting thought, but one thing did stop him from accepting outright. How do you know all this? It got groans from everyone else at the table. He played a character on the show for a couple of seasons, Ashina told him. Don't get him started, or he'll just roll right over you with it. Says the man whose namesake I portrayed, Shinji replied tartly. I didn't ask for that. No, you're just the one who said acting was stupid and didn't want to go. Karen sighed. Boys, not in front of the man, please. We're trying to give him a good impression, remember? They stopped their arguing and eyed Naruto cautiously. But he just grinned. Please don't mind me. I was hoping you guys would act normal around me. They all relaxed at that. Alright, next question. He spent the rest of the breakfast time talking with them, answering their questions and getting to know them. It felt good to get to know about his family. But as he talked with them, he felt cold eyes staring at him. He turned his head to find the eyes, but there was no one there actually watching him. Strange, he said silently. He turned back to the Uzumaki clan and continued talking to them, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Throughout the entire day, no matter where he went, the feeling of cold eyes watching him never went away. He tried looking multiple times, but he could never find the actual person looking at him, so it was like they vanished just as he turned his eyes onto them. It was getting annoying and ridiculous. Are you going to do something about this? Kurama asked him as he went back to his room as the sun went down over the horizon. His 9 tenants were getting just as peeved about the eyes as he was. He sat down at the table. Of course I'm going to do something about it. What? Sun asked. He looked out to the room, nicely decorated but not overly cluttered. Alright, we're alone now, he said. Show yourself. That's it. It usually works, Kurama told the Yambi. Gyuki nodded in agreement. Naruto waited in silence, watching everything in the room. He knew that someone else was in the room with him. He saw a shadow flicker against the corner, underneath the TV. He shot off the bed right at the shadow. His hand grasped something solid and he pulled out into the light, against the couch. As soon he saw who it was, his eyes widened in surprise but his grasp turned tighter. You! He said. Hello, Naruto, Black Setsu said. It's been some time. He regarded the creature he held in his hands. It wasn't wearing an Akatsuki robe and there was no white setsu it was attached to. It was alone, dressed in black clothes with a large coat that covered everything. But that didn't mean he would drop his guard. What are you doing here? Did the elusive man send you? Who's that? It asked. The elusive man, he said again. You know, the leader of the Akatsuki. The way he saw it, the only reason Black Setsu was here was because the elusive man had sent him. This was probably some assassination attempt. It curled its lip in disgust. I have nothing to do with that fake man and his fake organization. How dare you even think that I would belong to them? It's not so hard to think of, considering who you are. It broke his grip and stepped back, putting the couch between the two of them. I haven't been a part of the Akatsuki since the Fourth Shinobi World War. Nothing else deserves to use the name. Then why are you here? For you, of course, it answered. He took a defensive stance. What? Black Setsu sighed in exasperation, which was weird coming from him. Relax. I'm not here to harm you. You're here for me and you're not going to harm me? He asked redundantly. Yeah, anyone would call that bullshit. It's the truth. He didn't believe it for a single second. You stay right there, he ordered, clasping his hands together. Kaige Bunshin no Jutsu, he said, creating a clone. Watch him. You got it, the clone replied. What are you doing? Kurama said as he moved away from his spot. He kept his eyes on Black Zetsu as he backed up to the counter. Getting somebody in here so they can take care of this, he replied. Are you trying to call someone to come and get me? Black Zetsu asked, facing the clone. It won't work. There was an easy confidence in its voice, if it could pull it off. He didn't believe a word. You'll say anything. True, but I mean this. I've been hiding away from everyone on Earth for 2,000 years, Naruto. You really think that calling up security to your room to restrain me would work? Please, it would be an easy exercise. Not to be a bummer, Isaba said. But he might have a point. It, Naruto replied. Sorry? That's not a he, it's an it. Really? The turtle asked. It sounds like a guy to me. I don't care. It's an it. No, I'm with Isaba on this one, Komi said. That's definitely a guy, so we should call him a he. Are we really having this kind of a conversation? You're the one who brought it up. Can we just leave it at the fact that we're calling Black Zetsu he and not it? Kurama asked. This is getting very annoying. Sounds fine to me, Matatabi replied. Sun nodded. I'm good for it. Same here, Saiken agreed. We all agree, Gyuki said with the rest of the Bijun nodding. Naruto mentally groaned. You've gotta be kidding. Kurama was done with the argument. Shut up, Naruto. Zetsu's a he. Live with it. And getting back on point, Isaba said, trying to get the conversation back to where it started. He did say that he was able to survive for 2,000 years hiding from everyone. Maybe he's getting away from whoever call up is plausible. Plus, he's getting away would make you look like you're crazy, Kukuo pointed out to Naruto. That's the last thing you would need at this point with everyone thinking that you're imprisoned on the island for something. As much as he wanted to object, the Gobi had a point. Everyone on the island was aware of the fact that he was, for lack of a better word, imprisoned there. But they didn't know what for. He had been here 2 days and already they were speculating about what it was that he had done. No one had the guts just to walk up to him and ask, but he had heard a couple of the rumors. The sad part about it all was the fact the majority of the rumors thought he took after Jiraiya and Kakashi, and therefore did something that was both impressive and amazingly perverted. He was never going to get out of that shadow no matter what he did. He stopped moving but didn't dismiss the clone. Alright, what do you want then? He asked Black Zetsu. I already told you. I want you. Why? Can I say it was to meet an old friend? He scowled. That would imply we were friends to begin with. We sure as hell weren't that. All the villages kept an eye out for Zetsu early in the war, but as time went on their attention focused more and more on Obito's forces. By the time he went to face his father's former student, everyone had forgotten about Zetsu. You've got a point there. What do you want, Zetsu? Somehow, even though his face didn't visibly change, he saw him becoming serious. I've heard about your snooping around in the past. He was surprised by that. How? He started to ask. Did you really think that I would stay on Earth for 2,000 years? He scoffed at that. Come now, Naruto. In this day and age I can get around. I was quite surprised to hear of your awakening. I was even there on the citadel for your entrance to the specters. Naruto felt a little violated hearing that. He shuddered. Oh, that's just creepy. Get over it, Kurama ordered him. Black Zetsu ignored his shudder. I also knew that you were trying to dig up what happened during the Prothean's time. You've done some considerable work, but you've not gotten all. He didn't want to discuss that with him. That mission had sent him and his clones all over the galaxy to figure out what happened, and the only thing he got out of it was a rough picture and a plan to deal with the Reapers when they came. But he didn't get the full picture and didn't want to talk about it until he did. What do you know about it? More than you, he replied, a lot more. Was there no end to the surprises coming at him? How could you know about it? The creature actually looked like he was considering his next words. But it was so fake that Naruto had to resist the urge to slug him across the face. His clone had the same look on his face. He looked at him for the go-ahead. He shook his head in the negative. Let's just say I've got first-hand experience, Black Zetsu finally said. What does that mean? It means exactly what it means. I've got first-hand experience. He could not believe what he was hearing. He would rather believe that Obito was coming back than believe what he was saying. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit, he declared. There's no way you're over 50,000 years old. Black Zetsu finally turned away from the clone and looked right at him. You can accept the fact I can survive for 2,000 years, but you deny 50,000 years? I'd say you're throwing out mixed signals here, Naruto. He glared at him. Shut up. You can't be that old. It would mean that you're older than the Rikudo Sennin. Yeah, that's about right, he said with a shrug of his shoulders. But since you've been digging around and know some, I have to help you know the rest. The rest of what? The blonde asked. The truth, the answer to the question that's been plaguing you, take your pick. Bottom line, you'll be coming with me. He brought his guard back up. I don't think so. Do you want to know what really happened? Since he went through all that trouble, yes, he did. Not from you. He didn't trust Black Zetsu. Yeah, well, good thing it's not your choice. What? The doors slammed open and suddenly his room was flooded with people in robes. There it is! Someone shouted. Protect the Holy One. The robes raced towards Black Zetsu, trying to attack it. Naruto wondered just what exactly was going on when they started grabbing him. What the fuck? Let me go! He protested, trying to get free. But there were too many hands grabbing him and pulling him to the door. What is going on? Naruto, not to cause you any worry, Shikaka said, but I think our church is trying to kidnap us. He looked around and saw different colors on the robes. There were a different set of colors on each robe, the highest being 4. But while there were different sets, they were the same colors. He was being abducted by the Niners. This was just ridiculous. He fought even harder to get free. Would you people get off? He demanded, trying to push and shove all the hands pulling him to the door. It is as we feared, the fourth tail priest said, sounding horrified. Our Lord has been tricked by this foul thing. We must get him away from it. Were they talking about Black Zetsu? Just what the hell did they think was happening in here? Whatever it was, he needed a good explanation as to why they were trying to pull this. But no matter what he tried to do, they kept pulling him out of the room. He didn't realize that there was an actual going on in the room until someone flew at him and knocked down some of the priests holding him. He felt the multitude of grips on his person loosen, and he struggled harder to get free. The priests protested and tried harder to hold him in place. Their shouting overwhelmed his ears. No, Holy One! Resist him! Fight the evil! What are they talking about? He looked at Black Zetsu and he was pretty certain the creature was smiling. Is he having fun? Worry about that later. Get free! Sun urged him. He had that freedom within his grasp, but then something struck the back of his head and he fell unconscious. His last thought was, you've got to be kidding me. He came to groggily, the back of his head aching. He was sitting in a chair and there was a definite breeze going through his hair. He looked up and around. He was outside at the port. What am I doing out here? He saw that the priests were trying to get a nearby ship started and reaching the communication tower. A few were watching him, standing around him like they were guards. Kurama took one look at the situation and declared, this is something. You can say that again. This is something. The blonde inwardly glared. That wasn't a command, furball. You asked? Shikaka pressed on. This isn't something you're not used to, Naruto. Just escape already? Normally he would. But this would be the first time that he was escaping from rescuers, so to speak. He needed to know why they had suddenly burst into his room. He looked to the priests around him, finding the one with a single color. Hey you, he said loudly. The priests turned to face him, their eyes going wide at the sound of his voice. He's awake! A third tail priest shouted to the others. My lord, it is good to see you awake. He regarded the priest with a cool and imperious look, the same look he had given that fourth tail when the Niners came aboard the Normandy. I wasn't speaking to you. He looked at the one tail and said, you? And me? Replied the priest, pointing at himself. Yes. Good Kami, look at him, Koko said with head shaking. He looks like he's going to have an orgasm just from talking to you. I would have just said that he was going to faint, Saiken remarked. It doesn't matter, Naruto told them both. What is happening? He asked the priest. We're. He looked at the other priest unsurely. They didn't tell him anything. He was left to answer on his own. The kid looked like he had barely cracked his 20s. We're rescuing you, my lord. Rescuing? I'd say that it's more of a kidnapping. No, my lord, he protested, his fresh face horrified at the suggestion. Naruto fixed him with a hard look. What else would you call it when someone breaks into your room and kidnaps you? My lord. The kid looked like he was about to have a nervous collapse just from not being able to answer him. His eyes were wide and panicky, darting every which way. Are you really going to leave him hanging like that? Isabu asked. It was tempting, but the kid wasn't to blame. He was a grunt, bluntly speaking. Stop, Naruto told him as he was about to open his mouth. Take a moment. Breathe. He looked confused but did as he was told. He breathed and his eyes lost their panic view. The blonde waited for him to get back to regular breathing before speaking. Now tell me what's going on, in your own words. The kid started to panic again. Gaki, make him stop, Kurama ordered. I know. He raised his hand and the kid froze. Whatever you say, I will not hold it against you. Now tell me. My lord, the priests of the ninth tail had received word that you were imprisoned here on Semper Vigilavi since your return to Earth. They attempted to beseech the Alliance to release you into our care, but they were refused. That was not a surprise. Even the Alliance thought the Church of the Nine was extreme these days. He remembered, during his hunting for ruins, reading and hearing about the Church was picking fights with the travelers, harassing them amongst other things. Every time he heard about it, it seemed like it was getting worse. He might have found it funny that the two organizations he had inadvertently created were fighting like kids getting attention from their father, if he didn't know how serious it could turn out. That was why he, along with Hackett and Anderson, made sure that the Niners wouldn't be able to get anywhere near him. But that had proven to be false now. And so, because they were refused, they decided to kidnap me? He asked. The kid shook his head. No, my lord, he said. We would not have come unless it was urgent. Priest Shiro of the ninth tail was called last night. By who? You, my lord, he answered. What? He didn't make any call last night. He had gone straight to bed. Something was going on, and he knew he didn't like it. He looked around carefully for Black Zetsu but didn't see him anywhere. The ship came to life, humming with a volume that filled the entire port. A third tail appeared at the hatch. We can go, he called out. The first tail reached out to Naruto but stopped when he realized what he was about to do. Naruto regarded him with a cool look. I will not kill you if you touch me. The kid hesitantly stretched out his hand again. He took it and used it to pull himself out of the chair. My lord, said a second tail, motioning him towards the ship. He ignored her for the kid. Why would I call Shiro? He asked. I don't know, my lord. All I know was that we were to bring you back to the head church as soon as possible. Priest Shiro said that you were in mortal danger. From what? He asked. I don't know. Please, my lord. We must get to the safety of the head church. Where is that? He thought hard about where it might be. It had to be in a location that was known for him. Perhaps they had put it inside Konoha itself. A horror flashed through him when he realized what that could mean. If they built their church over my apartment, there's going to be hell to pay. The Kyuubi looked at his Jinchuriki. 2,000+ years they've been together, and yet the blonde was still able to surprise him. That's what you're worried about. That's my house. Why wouldn't I be worried about that? The land of waves, my lord, the kid answered. As soon as Naruto heard that answer, he knew the reason. The land of waves was his first mission, where he first made a mark on the people around him. He'd even be willing to bet money that they had built the church right next to the bridge. He walked to the ship, the priest surrounding him like a shield. My lord? Said the first tail quietly. Masato! Snapped a third tail beside him. She was a gray-haired woman who looked like a matron. He flinched at her voice. Naruto sent the third tail a cool look. He had a question for me. He may speak. He looked at the kid again. Speak. We have heard rumors that you anointed someone with the rank of 10th tail. Priest Amida of the 4th tail says these are just rumors, but they keep cropping up. At the mention of the priest he met on the Normandy, Naruto fought to keep a smile off his face. It does not surprise me that he would try to do such a thing. After all, I rebuked him in front of others when he stepped out of line, he said with an air of imperiousness and seemingly without thought. The first tail took the offered bait like a fish. So the rumors are true. There is a 10th tail? Yes, there is. I created her from my own flesh and my own blood. I named her sister and sent her out to learn about the galaxy. When she came back with all she knew, I found it satisfactory. I anointed her as my herald and declared that she spoke with my voice. He was in awe. This is truly amazing, my lord. Surely once the ninth tails hear of this, they will believe and declare it to be truth. Shikaku was amazed. Wow, this guy is really naive. As if people in power would even acknowledge the fact that there was suddenly someone more powerful than them. Ain't that the truth? Sun said with an amused chuckle. He wondered when the kid would be deprived of his naivety. Maybe there was a chance they could see it happen. You guys are cynics, Naruto told them in chastisement. They just snorted in derision. And you're not? Gyuki asked. They weren't wrong. He might be a cynic, but he didn't automatically ridicule anyone for their naivety. It was more like he waited for them to come to terms with reality. But the conversation did make him wonder about the kid. He didn't seem like the kind who would join the Niners. Then again, the Niners he had met didn't really leave a good impression. Now, answer a question of mine. The kid tripped over something that wasn't there, stumbling. He got his balance back and looked at him. My lord? He asked, wanting to be sure that he heard right. You have asked a question of me. I wish to ask a question of you. It is only fair. Again, the kid looked like he was about to faint. Oh, of course, my lord. The other priests looked disgusted and disappointed. It was like they were insulted he didn't ask them questions. They could get over it. Why did you join? The question made the kid stop in his tracks. And my lord? He said, stuttering. Why did you join? Join? Yes. Why did you join the Church of the Nine? He didn't answer because he was trying to figure out the answer. No one had really asked him that question. The other initiates did not talk about where they came from. His friends and family would look at him with exasperation. But there was a reason for why he came, buried deep inside of him. I wanted to do right. Naruto regarded him. That was an answer that could be both puzzling and simple at the same time. It was all in how it was explained. Explain yourself? The kid looked at the other priests for a moment, wondering if they would punish him if he spoke what he felt was the truth. But they didn't say anything, and he took it to mean that he could speak freely. I am aware of what other species and even humans think of the church, my lord. But that is not the whole of us. I joined the church because I believed in the ideals that you gave humanity. I wanted to be kind to others, help them with their problems if I could. I wanted to protect those I considered precious to me, be their shield. And he wanted to digest a lot of ramen too, Kurama added. Hush, Naruto ordered. The fox snorted in derision. Come on, Gaki. You can't tell me that you're thinking he's going to bring in ramen at some point. We are talking about a church built around you, after all. That could have been true, but he thought differently. He said ideals, not habits. And his eating ramen was most definitely a habit. Come to think of it, he hadn't ramen ever since he got out of the rock. That was something he needed to fix fast. But that was beside the point. I see, he told the kid. You do? I do. He gave him one more look. He could see himself in the kid, bright-eyed and eager. But instead of wanting to help others, he had been ready to kick some ass, beat Sasuke, and become Hokage. It was only after he became a shinobi that he started to help the people around him. Still, the similarities were striking. You've got a good heart, Masato. Keep it open as you grow older. The church could use someone like you. He smiled. Thank you for the praise, my lord. Lights flooded the area suddenly. It was such an intense light Naruto was forced to cover his eyes. He couldn't see, but he could hear. There were a lot of voices speaking fast. Police! Everyone freeze! What? How can this be happening? Protect the Holy One. Hands where we can see him. The fuck? It's the fucking Niners. What the hell are they doing here? That's none of your business. You're trespassing and trying to hijack a ship. That makes it our business. No one move! A cold hand grasped Naruto's arm. That's our cue, Black Zetsu hissed into his ear, time to go. What the? Before he could even protest, he was being pulled towards a ship. This was a different ship from the one the priests had started. It was smaller, and could probably only fit a few people. No one seemed to see him getting dragged. The two of them got inside the ship, through the airlock hatch, and he was shoved into a chair. Stay there, Black Zetsu told him, sitting down in the pilot's seat. Soon the ship started humming, and within seconds, they were taking off. This was a different feeling from the Normandy taking off. It was rougher and more uncomfortable. He felt plastered against his chair, unable to move as the ship shook and bucked, flying through the atmosphere to the sky. If this is going to be normal for the entire ride, I miss the Normandy, he cried inside his head. Are you kidding? This is great, Shikaku shouted with clear joy. It feels like I'm back in the desert in the middle of sandstorm. I've missed this feeling. You're weird. So what? The Tanuki asked without a care in the world. But the ride did start to smooth and settle down, making the blonde able to pull himself out of his chair. He sat at the edge, trying to make sure his heart didn't leap out of his throat. Having fun back there? Black Zetsu asked him. He glared at him. If I trusted my legs to stand up, I would come over there and strangle you. Good thing you don't trust them. He checked something on his screen. Don't get comfortable. We'll be there soon. And where exactly are we going? I thought that we were going to the head church in the land of waves. Black Zetsu barked out a laugh at that. Did you really think that you were going with the Niners? You're hilarious, Naruto. Then why were they in my room? I had to get you off the island somehow, didn't I? You wouldn't trust me to take you anywhere. You thought a religion was better? Yeah, I did. They were in quite a tizzy about you being on Earth and not being able to contact you. He frowned. That was intentional. I know it was. I don't blame you. He realized something and it made him want to gnash his teeth. You're the one who called them. You pretended to be me. Got it in one, he said, not even trying to deny it. What did you tell them? Oh, just that you needed their help and protection from something evil. That was it? He didn't say anything else? Naruto hoped that he said something else. Is that all? Yep, Black Zetsu answered without shame. Once they saw me in the room, they believed the lie and went with it. They're quite excitable, aren't they? You're not the one who was getting manhandled out the door, he thought. He was going to have to come up with something once he got back to the island. Otherwise it would rather suspicious that he was trying to run. He looked at the back of the cockpit. I wonder if I could blame him somehow. I'd like to ask a better question, Komi, said. Where's he taking us? And why does he want us to know about what happened 50,000 years ago? He did say that he lived that long, Isabu pointed out. Gyuki had a hard time believing that. He could be lying. Why would he? Countered Matatabi. You do remember that this guy was a part of the Akatsuki, right? The same Akatsuki that wanted to capture all of us so we could become the Jubi, remember? The Nibi frowned. It looked very human on a cat-like face. I do remember that, Gyuki. I also remember the fact that Akatsuki has long since passed. Why don't we just wait and see what he wants to show us? Saiken suggested. If things might go bad, Naruto can just kick his ass. The blonde frowned at that. Thanks for leaving all the work to me. Kurama eyed him. Who else is going to do it? We're in here. You're out there. Do the math. I hate you some days, furball. Love you too, Gaki. Now get moving. He approached the cockpit. Where are we going? He asked Black Zetsu. We're going to the moon, the creature replied. Why? I told you. You're going to see the whole truth. He didn't turn from his seat in the cockpit. So sit down and wait. We'll be there shortly. He couldn't do anything except as he was told. He wondered why they were going to the moon. What was there? Why did it have anything to do with what happened 50,000 years ago? What did Black Zetsu have to do with it all? He didn't ask any more questions. He waited as the ship flew to the moon, a trip that took 20 minutes. He watched from his chair as the ship landed on the moon's surface. All right, now what? He asked. Black Zetsu came out of the pilot's seat. Now we go outside. He walked to the back and opened the back closet. There was a spacesuit inside. Naruto didn't ask why there was a spacesuit. Where's the other one? I don't need one. He pulled out the spacesuit and held it out to him. Take this, put it on, and go walk outside. And do what? Take a hike? You'll find out. Now put it on. He took the suit and did as he was told. The suit felt a little bulky to him, but they always did to him. He approached the airlock and stepped through. Once the air inside the ship was safe from being sucked out, he stepped out onto the moon. As soon as his feet touched the surface, he found the Earth on the horizon. Seeing it there, half of hiding beneath the horizon which only made the blueness of it seem more, it reminded him of the first time he came to the moon. He shook his head at the memory. It feels so long ago, he thought to himself. It's been 2 years, Kurama told him. Enjoying the view? Black Zetsu asked as he came through the ship's hull. He touched down on the surface like it had a normal gravity. He breathed normally as if it had an actual atmosphere. I've been told that the view is breathtaking. I wouldn't know about that. You've been on the moon that many times, huh? Naruto asked him. Nah, this is my first time. If that was the case, why did he sound like it wasn't a big deal? This was getting weirder and weirder by the second. Whatever, what are we supposed to do now? I already told you, take a hike. Why? What's wrong with right here? He gave the blonde a long look of exasperation. You do want to get back to Earth, right? What was he talking about? Of course I do. Start walking then. They walked across the surface of the moon, the man in the spacesuit and the creature without one. They didn't have a general direction planned, and Black Zetsu would not say where they were going. He would just tell Naruto to keep walking. This kept on for an hour before the creature finally said, "All right, here's good." Naruto stopped and looked around. They were in a crater that looked just like one of many. The ship wasn't even in sight anymore. He was even more confused than before. Now what? He asked. Sit down and meditate. They did all that walking just so he could meditate? That's it. Yeah, that's it. Get to it. He grumbled as he sat down. It was a little difficult getting his legs into the proper position due to the suit. Once he was set, he brought his hands together and steadied his breathing. He closed his eyes as he breathed in and out. As he meditated, it felt like his chakra was leaving his body. What's going on? He wondered. Hey guys, you got any idea? His tenants didn't answer. Guys? He asked again. No reply. It was unnerving. The Biju had been within him since after his birth. To not have them inside his head felt wrong to him. He tried to stop, but for some reason he could not. He kept on meditating and his chakra was leaving his body. He forced himself to look at Black Zetsu. Hey, just what the hell is going? The moon shattered in front of him as a hand shot out of it. It grasped his neck tight and started to squeeze. He tried to get the hand off, but it was holding onto him like a vice grip. An arm and then a body emerged from the moon. 3 eyes found him, and they glared hatefully. He probably would have been more surprised at the fact there were 3 eyes, the third being right in the middle of the forehead, if it wasn't for the fact that 2 of those eyes were Byakugan, while the third looked to be the Sharingan, albeit with the Rinnegan's ripple pattern. He looked past the eyes to look at the whole. It was a woman holding him down. She was dressed in a robe that was both formal and yet archaic. Her long white hair fell down the entirety of her back, to her feet. 2 horns jutted up from her head, making her look more terrifying. She looked down at him, her face expressionless. Her lips did not move, but he could hear her voice. Who? He activated the Rinnegan so he could push her off. But all the chakra he had left was only enough to activate. Damn it! This really wasn't the kind of position he wanted to be in right now. She saw the eyes and her own blazed with indignant rage. How? She demanded, again not moving her lips. How what? He asked back, unable to ask properly. His voice couldn't get past the hand. Mother! Called out Black Zetsu, coming into view. Oh, now he comes to help. Naruto thought. Wait, Mother? What's going on here? He watched as the creature came in close and touched her. She calmed down instantly. She looked more closely at Naruto. Hagoromo? She asked, letting go of him. The need to cough, to get back the air he lost, filled him to the extent of being overwhelming. He had to fight it, to breathe normally. He's not your son, Mother. He's the descendant, Black Zetsu told the woman. Mother, 50,000 years have passed. Those words made her freeze in place. Reapers, she said with a look of horror on her face. He nodded. They've come again. Naruto got back to his feet. He looked at Black Zetsu. Okay, what the hell is going on here? He demanded. Why can't I hear the Biju? He doesn't know what really happened, Mother, Black Zetsu whispered in her ear. He only has scraps. She frowned and reached out again. But this time, she went for his head. Her hand passed through his helmet and touched his head. He saw Konoha's street, him as an orphan, hunger gnawing at his belly and heart wanting love. Hateful eyes looking down at him as he passed through the streets. He didn't know why. Other children leaving him alone whenever he dared to come near to play. They looked down at him, but they didn't know why. He looked at the Hokage monument. He wanted to be like them. He wanted to be acknowledged. The third Hokage looked down at him, grandfatherly smile giving him encouragement. He entered the academy, determined to prove himself. He failed, time and time again. People mocked him for what he couldn't do. They called him things. Loser. Dead last. Dope. He raged in their faces, wanting to prove them wrong. He graduates unorthodoxly, learning the truth of himself in process. He is the host of the Kyuubi, the monster responsible for the village's disaster. Suddenly, the looks made sense. It makes him want to prove them wrong even more. He meets his team. Sakura, a girl he had a crush on, and Sasuke, a boy he wanted to beat. They met Kakashi, their sensei and a man who would become one of his best teachers. They are tested. They pass. They go on missions. He finds them exhausting and boring. They go to the land of waves and learn what a shinobi means. He redeems a demon swordsman and helps protect a bridge. His team grows closer. They return for the chance to become Chunin, meeting old friends and soon-to-be new ones. They're tested harshly and they don't come out the same way they go in. The village is invaded at the finals, making things different. He fights against a brother he didn't know he had. He stops him, making him see what the truth was. But he loses the man who was his grandfather in all but name. He goes with Jiraiya, a pervert of great proportions and a great teacher, to find someone to lead the village. They find Tsunade, a disillusioned drunk of a woman and Jiraiya's teammate. They fight with each other, and she gives him a challenge. She doesn't think he would be able to do it. He proves her wrong and reignites her will of fire while they fight off Orochimaru, the traitor of Konoha. They come back and Tsunade is anointed as the Godame Hokage. But things are different in the village. Sasuke becomes consumed by his need for vengeance. He goes to Orochimaru, wanting the power he has. He tries to stop him with friends, but they fail. He leaves with Jiraiya, wanting to be strong to bring his friend back. He comes back after 2.5 years. He learns of Gaara being taken. He goes to save his friend and brother. He loses him but gets him back at the sacrifice of someone else's life. Again, he tries to save Sasuke, only to fail again. The pain of losing him again nearly overwhelms his heart. Only Sakura's words give him the comfort that they can try again. He learns of the Akatsuki and their mission to take the Biju, but he doesn't know why. All he knows is that they took one of his teachers and a sensei to his friends. He helps them take down the men responsible. He learns of Orochimaru's death and immediately understands what Sasuke wants next. He goes after his friend, trying to find him again and bring him home. But he fails again. Sasuke vanishes and so does the body of his brother. He returns to Konoha, disappointed by the fact he failed again. His disappointment turns into anger and sadness when he learns Jiraiya is dead, killed by the hand of the Akatsuki leader, Pain. The Toads offer to train him the same way they trained Jiraiya. While he trains, Pain invades the village. He goes back, but it almost seems too late. The village is destroyed. Many people are dead, even some he knows. He fights against Pain. It's a battle that takes all he had and then some more. But it's not enough. He's forced to the ground by Pain. Hinata tries to save him but fails, her lifeblood bleeding out in front of him. Anger and rage consumes him. He loses control and lets the fox take over. He just wants the pain to end. The fox offers him a way out. Free him and let him take over. It's tempting. He could take it. It was a way for all of it to stop. But as he reaches out, a firm hand grabs him, stopping him. It throws him away from the cage, back into the water-filled floor. That same hand offers him help up. He takes it and looks at the man who stopped him. Shock rips through him as he looked at the man. Minato Namikaze. The Yondaime Hokage. His father. He rages at the man, angry about his life pouring out as he shouts. But happiness and sadness were also mixed in there. They talk and his father is able to bring him out of the rage. He returns to the fight with his senses cleared. He finishes the fight and stands over Pain in victory. But he does not feel victorious. He knows that the battle isn't over. He follows the chakra and finds Nagato, another of Jiraiya's students, at the end of it. As much as he wants to attack and kill the man, he doesn't. Instead, he asks to hear his story. Nagato tells him of his life, of his hardships, his love for his friends, and his losses. At the end of his tale, he makes a decision. He would not kill this man, even though he had killed Jiraiya and attacked the village. Nagato quickly shows his disbelief, but he stands up, hoping for the peace that could come if achieved. Nagato is impressed by his words and his resolve. He gives something in return. He brings those he killed in Konoha at the cost of his own. He dies with a small smile, urging Naruto to bring peace. He lets Konan take the bodies of her teammates and leave. He goes back to the village, needing to see everyone was still alright. But his tired body does not let him. He falls to the ground. Kakashi-sensei is there to grab him. He carries him on his back, letting him rest. They go back to the village and he receives a shock. The people of the village are all there, waiting for him. They cheer him on, hailing him as a hero. It's a surprising feeling that runs through him, but it soon turns to happiness. They recognize him. They don't see him as a monster anymore. But the joy turns to ash sooner than he would like. As they rebuild the village, he learns of Sasuke. He's gone further than he could have thought possible. He hears of how his friend attacked the Raikage's brother, another Jinchuriki, taking him away. The Kumo shinobi want answers and information. But he can't give up Sasuke, not like this. So instead he offers himself to the shinobi, letting them take out their anger on him. It gets him beaten to the point of being a bloody pulp. He doesn't stop them, nor does he allow anyone else to stop them. When they're done and leave him, they're calmer but still want to pursue Sasuke. He's taken to be healed. He decides to go after the Raikage, to plead for Sasuke. Kakashi-sensei and Yamato go with him. When he meets with the Raikage, he bows his head to the ground and begs for mercy. The Raikage refuses his pleas and dismisses him, leaving him behind, still bowing in the snow. He's dejected while they find an inn to rest. Tobi, one of the Akatsuki and more than he appears, finds him there and tells him the truth of how the Uchiha clan was destroyed. His words make Naruto try to find his friend even more. Not even Sakura's false confession stopped him. He finds Sasuke about to kill Sakura, on the surface of a river beneath a bridge. They fight once more, and this time, it's a draw. They exchange words, Naruto promising to shoulder his hatred alone and Sasuke promising to kill him. The world went on around them and war is declared between Akatsuki and the hidden villages. But he doesn't know that. Instead, they try to protect him by keeping him in secrecy. He's taken to a hidden island known only to Kumogakure to be trained by Killer Bee, the Raikage's brother. He fights the Kyuubi on that island. The battle is a hard one that he almost loses. He is only saved by a single person. Kushina Uzumaki. His mother. She tells him that she loves him, just like she had told his father. It gives him the strength and drive to win the fight. He takes the Kyuubi's chakra and wields it himself. He learns to harness and control the new chakra. But while he does, the war starts. He finds out and goes to join it, despite what others tried to do to stop him. He and Bee left the island to join the fight. He made several clones to aid in the battles everywhere. They run into Tobi and the resurrected Jinchuriki. In their fight, things turn desperate. But in that fight, he truly made a connection to the fox, who he knew now as Kurama. They became partners and stood united. They fought against the other Biju, and he learned their names too. When it was only Tobi they faced again, they stood with Kakashi and Might Guy. They broke through the mask, revealing Tobi to be Obito Uchiha, Kakashi's teammate. Madara Uchiha, resurrected through the Edo Tensei, joins the fight. Together the two of them allow the Jubi to be resurrected. The Shinobi Alliance comes to join the fight, but even then it does not seem like it is enough. Miji, a man he once defeated and now called friend, sacrificed himself to prevent him from dying. For a moment, he was lost to the despair. Hinata brought him back from that despair, telling him not to insult the people who had died for him. He gives Kurama's chakra to her and to everyone else. Their will to fight is renewed. As they fight, more people join the fight. Everyone looks on in shock as the first four Hokages join the battle, along with Sasuke and Orochimaru. Team 7 becomes reunited once more against the Jubi. The sight of Sasuke fighting alongside him and Sakura gives him a renewed sense of hope. That hope is dulled when Obito steps upon the Jubi and seals it inside of himself. At first it seems like he is an animal, all instinct with no control. But that control comes and he becomes more powerful than before. Naruto watches him, seeing what he would do next. Everyone was surprised when Obito turned on Madara and decapitates him with a swift strike. The infamous Uchiha falls to the ground and does not get up. He turned on the Hokages and destroyed them all. He stole the half of Kurama inside Minato and left, claiming that he would show Naruto how pointless his dream was. No one knew what to do next. Was the war over? Was that it? They returned home, waiting cautiously for what could come next. Even then, they were not ready for Obito's next strike. An entire city destroyed by him. It marked the continuance of the war. They did not run away when Obito made his declaration. They stepped up and fought back. But as much as they fought, they knew what was happening. Obito went across the land, destroying places on a whim. If he was serious, they would have lost at the beginning. Men started to flock to Obito's side, becoming his army. They became the ones who attacked what Obito commanded be destroyed. The map of their land changed with each passing day, losing more and more ground each time. He saw too much destruction, too much death, too much people thinking that they were all better off giving up. It doesn't break him. It only makes him want to stop Obito even more. He starts on a plan, a way to stop Obito. He realizes that there's only one way to do it. Take the Jubi out of Obito, seal it within someone else. He would not let someone else do this task. He would do it himself. The more he worked on the seal, the more the war continued, the more he focused on it. He wanted the war to end, and this was the only way he knew it could. The others began to wonder what it was he was doing. He only told them it was top secret work on a seal. It was a partial lie. If they knew the truth, they wouldn't let him finish the work. That couldn't happen. This was the only way. Something else happened during the war. Something he didn't notice until he was forced to. People were growing closer, falling in love. Shikamaru finally chose to go steady with Temari. No one was surprised. Shino got a girlfriend. Everyone was surprised. He watched as people got together, first in friendship and then in love. He could have felt jealous for what was happening all around him. He would have been hypocritical if he did. He made his choice. He had to finish the seal. The war continues. More people flee from Obito and the armies that follow him. The remaining lands become swollen with the refugees. Time presses down on him, urging him to finish the seal. B gets taken by Obito, right in front of his eyes. He was helpless as he watched his friend get dragged away like he was a sack of meat. He goes back to Konoha and shuts himself away. He works through the night, finishing the seal. Once it's completed, he goes to the Kages and announces that he's going to end the war. They try to stop him. He doesn't let them. He walks out of the village, going after Obito. His mind was set on one thing: end this. End this now. He finds Obito waiting for him. There are no words spoken between them. All that's left is what's to come. They fight and the land around them is transformed. With blows struck or missed, a new impact rips the earth apart. The forests start burning because of their clashing fury. The routes of rivers are changed by the shockwaves of jutsu thrown around. It's a tough battle, one that forced him to bring every ounce of skill he's made for himself. There was a chance that he could have lost. But he knew that chance would never come. His chances of victory were much greater than Obito because of that seal he slapped on both of them at the beginning. Each time he had Obito in his grip, he'd reach through the seal and tear a piece of the Jubi's chakra out, sealing it into himself. Obito realized what he was doing and tried to stay away. He wouldn't let the bastard get away. 9 times he has Obito in his grasp. 9 times he reaches through the seal and tears out a piece of the chakra. By the end, the tables have turned. He was the stronger of the two. The fight ends with him standing over Obito's broken body. He looked down at the man that had caused so much misery. The man who had been his father's student. The man who unleashed Kurama on the village, making his parents sacrifice their lives to stop the attack. The man who helped Itachi slaughter their clan, leaving Sasuke as the only survivor. The man who manipulated Nagato into becoming something that he wasn't. The man who destroyed cities, towns, villages, because he needed to prove a point and feel victorious over him. The man who hunted Orochimaru for amusement, while he protected the last of his family. He only felt one thing as he looked at the dead body. He felt satisfied. But his feeling of victory was overridden by pain. There was so much pain. He knew where it came from. The Jubi was trying to take over. The time came for the next step. It couldn't be a step taken by him. The others had to do it for him. They don't want to do it, but there is no choice. Once they know that, they do as he asked. They seal him away. He falls into a dreamless void where time has been forgotten. There, he faces the Jubi. They battle for control of his body. He does not know how long it actually takes. He wins the battle by breaking the jubi. He tears it down until the 9 Biju are back. To protect them, with their agreement, he seals all of them inside himself. All of the jubi's power was inside him without it trying to overwhelm him. When he opens his eyes again, he's in another hospital. But it's not on Earth. It was not even the same time. He was on a different planet. He was in a different time. Humanity had reached the stars and found they weren't alone. 2,000 years had passed since his friends were alive. The news of that weighed down on him more than Choji. But he had to move on. A job was offered to him once he was back up to form. It quickly complicated. He wasn't surprised. Once he was past the hurdles, he joined the ranks of the Spectres. He was given an assignment: hunt down the Spectre that turned rogue, Saren. A team forms around him as he hunts for the Turian. He sees them as teammates, and they quickly turn to friends. He's glad to have them. The hunt for Saren becomes more when he finds that Saren is not alone. He tries to bring something back to the galaxy, something cold, something dark. There's a name that comes with it. Reapers. Saren thinks he's in league with them, but that's not it. He's their puppet, used to voice what they want. He stops the Reapers from coming from the darkness between the stars, killing Saren in the process. But even though it is a victory, he knows that it will not be the end. The Reapers would come again. He tries to take his mind off of the idea, doing whatever the Council wants him to do. But then he's attacked by creatures he had never seen before. He escapes only going to a place he had turned his back on. The Toads allow him to go free, but in exchange for something else. As he tries to do that, he finds himself dragged into something more. He was forced to play a long game, to trick all those who thought they were the better positioned. He played them into letting one have control of him to destroy the other. He had to accept drastic measures to do it, losing his memory and his ability to wield his chakra. When he awoke with no memories of what he had done, the game had begun. He went after the tribe, a new team at his back. Some were old friends. Some were loyal to the Akatsuki. And some were he didn't expect. That didn't stop him. He turned them to his side. Through his hunt, he relearned of who had attacked him. The collectors. His attention turned to them. He went after them. He learned they served the Reapers. He learned they took captured humans and melted them down to become the blood for the Reaper they were building. He couldn't let it be completed. He destroyed the Reaper before it could be fully created. The base was destroyed all around. His team fled. They escaped with their lives save one. They fled, leaving behind the collectors and the Akatsuki. The Alliance swooped in and took them all in. It should have been a victory, but it was tinged with grief. A friend and teammate, someone who had been loyal to the end, was dead. And he knew that what he had done wouldn't be enough. The Reapers would still be coming. The finger pulled away from his head. He felt his body come back to his control. Not enough, the woman said. He didn't know what she meant by that. He didn't even know how she was able to make his life flash before his eyes, something he thought was supposed to happen only when he was about to die. But he didn't ask how she did it. What do you mean not enough? He demanded. Reapers still coming, she said, her lips still not moving. Run. Run? Run away? She nodded. He scowled. Like hell I will. The woman actually looked surprised at his words. She looked at him with a puzzled look. Why? This single or short reply was starting to grate on his nerves. He had more questions than he would have liked. Who was this woman? Why did she burst out of the moon like that? How did she know the Reapers? But the question on his mind was the one she asked. Why what? He said. Why won't I run? She nodded barely. Yes. There were a lot of different ways Naruto could have answered that. But he remembered Sakura's words to him. They were enough. I don't run when an enemy is at the gate, trying to destroy everything about us. I stand my ground and I fight back with everything I've got. I protect the ones who can't protect themselves. No matter how long or how exhausting it may be, I will keep fighting. That's who I am. He stared defiantly at her. I am Naruto Uzumaki. I never give up. I will keep fighting until the war is over or until my last breath. I fight to protect all those who are precious to me, because that's who I am. The woman had started to scorn him with a sneer. But the sneer froze as she listened to what he had to say. When he was done, she was looking at him with a new look in her eyes. Black Zetsu laughed. Does he remind you of anyone, Mother? He asked. She nodded slowly. Yes. He's not going to stop. He believes that they can win against the Reapers. Hopeless. Things might be different this time around, Mother. And… He paused. His face grimaced like what he was about to say could possibly be the foulest thing to come out of his lips. I have faith in him. I believe that with him at the front, the Reapers will finally be defeated. Hearing those words made Naruto feel really uncomfortable. This was Black Zetsu, someone who had fought against him as a part of the Akatsuki. It was one thing to hear praise and admittance of faith from a dead Itachi or his dad. It was another to hear from the creature who had helped cause the mess that was his early life. Perhaps, said the woman. She looked as if she was considering the very fact. Show him, Mother. Show him what you know. That way, he knows the full scope. All right. She stretched her hand once more to Naruto. The blonde started backing away from the hand. Whoa, hang on. Couldn't you just tell me what you know? He asked quickly. That last one had left him really drained. He didn't know if he could handle another one like that. Her fingers stretched out closer to his face. Not enough. What does that even mean? The finger passed through his helmet and touched his forehead. He braced himself for the onslaught of memories, but found himself standing inside a building. What the? He asked himself, looking around. He didn't know where he was. There weren't any windows that he could look out to figure out his location. If there were no windows, that either meant he was in a base on a planet with no breathable atmosphere or deep underground. But aside from that, he couldn't tell where he was or what time it was. But if he was to hazard a guess as to the period, he would say that the woman sent him back 50,000 years. Until told otherwise, he was going with that. There were people running down the corridor both ways. There was an air of panic above them, but it did not show on their faces. These faces were set, determined. They all moved with purpose as an alarm wailed overhead. Awooga! 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 Are you kidding me? He thought to himself in disbelief. It's 50,000 years ago, and they've got the same annoying alarm. Maybe the past wasn't so different from his present. Someone came right at him. It was a man dressed in what might have been a doctor's outfit. Naruto couldn't tell. It was white like a doctor's gear, but it was stitched up the wrong way. The more he looked, the more he was certain that there were no stitches. They didn't crash into each other. The doctor walked right through him and continued on his way. Whoa, that was weird. This wasn't like his dreams about Sakura. He couldn't touch anyone here. He found his attention being drawn to a singular person. She was dressed in what looked like a military uniform. Again, there were no stitches, and had her red hair braided long. She had no weapons, but she moved like she knew how to fight. In fact, he knew that kind of walk because he walked it himself. Her knees bent slightly so she could jump at a moment's notice. Her feet touched the ground so they would have the best grip. She was actively controlling her speed, keeping herself slow. This woman was a kunoichi. But it was more than that. She was also the woman on the moon. When she walked past him, he felt himself pulled after him. It was a sharp tug at his knee that made him follow her. If he tried to ignore the feeling, it would just pull him by force. He saw people bowing their heads to her. She was clearly in a position of power. She gave the nod back to them all, but her eyes had a modicum of doubt. What the doubt it was, it had something to do with what the people thought about her. The more she walked, the thinner the crowd became until she stood alone at a door. She paused, her hand almost touching the handle. Why was she waiting? Was she afraid of what lay beyond? I wish I could hear what she was thinking, Naruto thought to himself. He paused, waiting for the biting remark from Kurama. Then he remembered that he couldn't feel the fox or his other 8 tenants. It was truly weird to not hear them. The woman pushed open the door and walked in. As soon as she was through the door, she came to attention. My Lord Shadow, she said to the man in the room, you summoned me? The man she addressed turned from the screens mounted on the wall. They were showing different video feeds, but Naruto couldn't tell what they were all about. What also hindered him was the fact that the man blocked a good deal of the screens. A large cloak engulfed him, hiding his entire body from sight. A hood was pulled over his head. His face was covered by a bone-white mask. Kaguya, commander of the Silent, he said back. I have. We've received word. The Protheans on Kali have fled. She growled, those traitorous, four-eyed bastards. They came to us, begging for us to help them, and they leave us alone. He raised his hand out of the cloak. Peace, Commander, they did what they could. But we must face the facts. They were an unpopular group inside the Prothean Empire for wanting to ask for our help. She scoffed. It is truly amazing the pride those four eyes have. Naruto looked over at her and saw her eyes were full of disgust. We've both been fighting the Reapers since they've come in, yet they still refuse to ally as a whole with us. Why would they? The Shadow asked her. We've been rebelling against the Prothean Empire long before the Reapers. Our constant refusal to submit and alliance with other chakra races has been a constant needle in their side. She smirked. Clearly, she enjoyed the thought of that. And may we keep on needling. Naruto couldn't see the Shadow's eyes, but he could feel the sadness radiating from him. That will happen no longer, Kaguya. The Prothean Empire has fallen. She started to smile. Surely, Lord Shadow, the news is a good thing. He shook his head. I know it has been a long time since the school, but you are still my pupil, Kaguya. Have my years as your teacher taught you nothing? No, they haven't. You know that. Then you know what it means for us once the Protheans have been beaten. She did. Naruto could see it on her face. She tried to hide it, but it was there. She did know what it meant. Their attention will turn to us. The Shadow nodded. Yes, us and our allies, he told her. Has word been sent to the Quarians and the Krogan? It's too late. Horror filled her face. They're gone? The Reapers killed them? There was a tone in her voice that held hope that it wasn't so. But it was covered by the grief and horror. The Shadow shook his head again. No, they were able to trigger the change. They are safe from the Reapers, and their people were able to change the records to show that the Protheans were studying, not fighting them. We're currently doing the same thing on Kali. But their designated survivors were killed before the change was triggered. They will not know how to utilize the chakra tree that has been planted on their homeworld. He looked at her. It's time, Kaguya. Those words were spoken gently, like an instructor coaching his student to the right answer, but they made Kaguya stiffen in place. Lord Shadow, we can still fight, she protested. We can't give up now. You've been on the front lines on every battle against the Protheans and the Reapers, Kaguya, he said. Do you really think that we have a chance? Yes, I do. But she said it with no real conviction. The Shadow knew it too. If you had a choice of fighting to the end, or protecting the people you swore to defend and cherish? She almost seemed to struggle with the answer. She wanted to say one thing and she knew that the truth was another. I would protect the people, she answered, almost in defeat. Somehow, Naruto got the impression that the Shadow was smiling beneath his mask. And that's why you were chosen as a designated survivor. Once you wake up again, you will protect humanity and guide it. I thought it was because I was the most skilled chakra wielder of my generation and the best fighter too, she remarked. There was a hint of bitterness in her voice when she spoke. That was a factor. Another factor was the fact that where people saw a punk kid from the streets with a chip on her shoulders and an attitude to match, I saw a girl who wanted to prove herself and had the drive to do so. I saw the warrior she could be. I helped her become that warrior and more. There was pride in his voice as he spoke to her. And she did. Now everyone looks up to her. She looked glad to hear the pride in his voice. But then concern crossed across her face. Master Thomas, she started. He raised a hand and she stopped. You forget, Kaguya, I gave up my name and what I was when I became a Lord Shadow. I am no longer your teacher from school. You're more than to me, she said. You're the closest thing I have to a father. Please, they can ready another pod. You have the skills and the right mindset. You can be made a designated survivor. He shook his head. The protocol is clear. Only 2 must sleep. It must be 1 man and 1 woman. And you know that it would take too long to prepare another pod, with the High Command recalling all humans back to Earth. But you'll be gone, she protested feebly. And you will be safe from the Reapers, you and Shinji. That is a price I will gladly more than once. Take comfort in that, and in the fact that you will not be alone in the new age. His posture straightened and his words became more formal. You have your orders, Commander. Attend to them. She came to attention and saluted him. As you say, my Lord Shadow, she said. Without another word, she turned around and left. The scene around Naruto faded into blurriness. He tried to see what was happening, but it was all so obscure. Suddenly, the scene came into sharp focus. He was a white room. He stood between a computer screen and two egg structures on the other side of the wall. They must have been the pods. The computer wasn't dormant. Instead, it was flashing red and the same word was shown, again and again: malfunction. What kind of malfunction? He wondered. The eggs opened, the bottom half pulling down, the top half raised up. His attention was focused onto the one on the left. Kaguya came out of the left in a slump. She fell to the ground, gasping for breath. He watched her as she stayed on the ground, fighting hard to get her breath under control. She was different from the last time. She wore a white robe that covered her body completely. The rosy complexion on her skin was gone, leaving her completely pale. Her hair was longer and white as snow. When it was, she started to look around. The first thing she noticed was right in front of her. White? She asked, grasping a strand of her hair. Why is my hair white? Was this supposed to happen? Hey, Shinji, she said, turning her head. Is your hair white? She trailed off, and then a scream of horror filled the room. Naruto looked and saw a mummified man on the ground beside her, his arm already detached from his corpse. It was hard to tell when he had died, but it was clear that it happened whilst it was in the pod. No, no, no! Kaguya pleaded as she stared at the body. This wasn't supposed to happen. You're supposed to be alive. You shouldn't be dead. Her eyes found the computer. Her lips read the word on the screen. She scrambled over to it, and one of the keys. Computer, explain. What is the malfunction? Malfunction in power supply, the computer spoke with a dead voice. Supply amount dropped faster than expected to do earthquake, upsetting the base and disabling base power core. Why is Shinji dead? In order to maintain designated survivor life support, one had to be depowered and rerouted to the second. Designated survivor Kaguya had better chakra readings than designated survivor Shinji. Ruling was made to switch off designated survivor Shinji in order to maintain designated survivor Kaguya. Naruto saw how shocked she was by the reading. Her lips were moving, silently repeating the words that she had heard. She couldn't believe the words that she saw in front of her. She didn't want to believe them. You killed him for me? You killed him? Correct. She let her head fall down as she cried. Naruto wasn't sure what he could do to help her. He couldn't touch her. So he was forced to step back and watch her cry. The room filled with her quiet sobs. They stopped suddenly when she jerked her head back up. What happened to me? She demanded, grabbing strands of her hair. Loss of power forced to scale back protection systems of designated survivor Kaguya to bare minimum in order to preserve her life. Loss of pigmentation in hair and skin resulted from scaling back. Emergence protocols could not be enacted at specific time because scaling back. What? What does that mean? How long did I sleep? Her voice grew more and more panicked with each word she said. It has been 45,682 years since the change was triggered. Her face morphed back into a look of horror. No, that can't be right. We were supposed to awaken earlier than that. We couldn't have slept that long. She pounded the keyboard. This can't be happening. It has been 45,682 years since the change was triggered. She pounded the keyboard a few more times, screaming profanities that would have impressed Tsuchikage. The computer kept repeating the same thing over and over again, the amount of time since this change was triggered. Eventually she stopped. She stood before the computer, glaring at it like she wanted it dead, breathing heavily. All right, now what? She asked. Designated survivor Kaguya is awake. All power now rerouting into fixing base power core. Well, the room started blaring with the sound of alarms. Awooga! Awooga! She clapped her hands over her ears. She didn't like the alarms any more than he did. He felt glad for that. What is it? She demanded. What's happening? Warning! Rerouting power to core failed. Core explosion imminent. Base will be destroyed. Evacuation of designated survivors required. Activating evacuation protocols. She started glowing. She looked down at her feet. Her pale eyes went wide in realization. She knew what was happening to her. But when she looked over at Shinji's body, she saw that it wasn't glowing. Wait, she told the computer. Where are you sending me? Designated survivor Kaguya will be evacuated to location of chakra tree. Evacuation protocols going into effect. The glow engulfed her own body, encasing her into a shell of white. Naruto took one look at that shell. He was astounded. It was a shell made out of chakra. The computer had activated chakra to protect and send her away from what was coming next. The sphere vanished. He felt himself being pulled after it, his focus blurring in obscurity once again. What came next, he only saw in flashes. To a normal eye, they would have been brief, something too fast to actually see. But he saw them all, and he saw the story that was in them. She found herself near the chakra tree, the thing that she was supposed to protect and help guide humans to the stars again. Humans found her. They were dressed from the Middle Age. She was brought to their king. She told them that she was to guard the chakra tree. She lived among them. She grew close to the king, shared his bed. But she did not love him. She couldn't love him. She had loved Shinji. He had been her rival, then her friend, and then the man who she would have gladly married. The king wasn't Shinji. She couldn't stop looking at him and seeing Shinji. It was the same thing wherever she went. She was from a time when buildings scraped the sky, where the world was not enough, where she could travel the stars with ease. Seeing this small, almost tiny, piece of land, with no buildings made of concrete or steel, she felt confined. She knew of the change. She was made known to what it meant when she became a designated survivor. Once all humans were brought back to Earth, the change would be triggered. It was a wave of chakra that washed over Earth. It would destroy cities and kill the population, reducing them back down to 15%. But it was more than that. The change would also wipe away any memory of the stars, of life in them, and of great machines. Humans would be reduced to hunters and gatherers, eking out a simple life. They would start civilization over again, slowly but surely, safe from the Reapers. That should have been the time she and Shinji should have awoken. As the hunters and gatherers began to settle and turn into farmers, they would have awoken and brought them chakra again. They would have led humanity back to the stars, laid the groundwork from which they would grow. They would be considered gods, even though they were just survivors. But she had awoken late. Civilization had started without them. The maps were different too. Indus had been destroyed in the change, lost under the sea. She could not guide it the way she should have. And she was lonely. Wherever she looked, she kept waiting to see things that weren't there, people who were long dead. What was worse was that people were still killing each other. How ignorant they were, killing each other while the Reapers were waiting for them out there. The Reapers. She felt coldness pour through her soul each time she thought of them. They plagued her dreams, stopping her from sleeping well. The king asked what was wrong. She didn't tell him. How could she? He didn't know the horror of the Reapers. The more she spent time amongst them, the more she saw how she had to protect them. Protect them from the Reapers. Protect them from themselves. She had to stop them. There was a way to do it. She took the fruit from the chakra tree and ate it for herself. The power she already had grew more powerful from that fruit. The humans were powerless to stop her. She brought them to heal through the infinite Tsukuyumi. There they would be safe. In their own dreams they would lay comfortable. But still her training and purpose were clear. Humans had to live to reach the stars again, to fight the Reapers when they came. She brought back some of the humans, and set them to live their lives with no memories of what she did. She was unaware that she had been pregnant when all of this happened. She had the power to halt it. She didn't. They were her children. A memory came back to her, a wish she never thought she would have. She had wanted a family. She gave birth to 2 boys. Seeing them nestled together, sleeping innocently with no dreams of dark creatures of metal and hate filled her with so much love. She didn't care that they didn't look anything like Shinji. Her babies grew into boys and then into men. They found out what she had done. They turned against her. How could they know what she was trying to do? They would not listen to what she had to say. They stole from her, stole the power she was using to keep all of them safe. Rage engulfed her when they stood in defiance. She bonded with the chakra tree, taking all of its power, so that she could stop her sons. She would make them see what it was she tried to protect them. She created a monster with 10 tails lashing. But they defeated her. They sealed her away. In those last moments before she lost consciousness, she formed her will and separated it from her body. She would wait until it could free her. The last thing she saw was her sons' faces. In spite of everything they had done to betray her, she still loved them. And maybe, just maybe, the nightmares would stop now. Naruto felt winded as she pulled away her finger. He looked at her with a new sight. You? He asked. I fought you. You're the Jubi? She's more than that, Black Zetsu told him. This is Kaguya Otsutsuki, the mother of the Rikudo Sennin, your ancestor. And she was more than that still. She had been a warrior. She fought against the Reapers almost to the end. They plagued her for the rest of her life, along with the memories of everything that was and had been. If people had only seen what she was when she took control, they would have seen a monster, a demon. But she wasn't those things. She was a shell-shocked soldier who did what she thought was best. And now, he was in the same position that she had been in. I understand what you've gone through, he told her. I'm fighting the Reapers too. I've seen what they can do. But I'm not going to stop fighting. She looked at him as if he was proclaiming stupidity. You should. He didn't protest her words. She spoke them from experience that he didn't have. But while he didn't have her years of fighting the Reapers, his experience fighting Obito was close enough of a comparison for him. And he also realized something else. She had been brash and headstrong, willing to dive into battle to protect the people she loved without a second thought. He could see himself in her, and he could see Sasuke in her from being a prodigy with chakra and weapons. Grandmother, he said, getting her attention, from one former punk kid with a chip to another, there's no way in hell I'm lying down to let the Reapers roll over me. I am not going to stop fighting. I'm going to stand in their way again and again, and I am going to beat them. That is a promise, and I never go on my word. He really doesn't, Black Zetsu agreed with an amused shake of his head. It's really amazing how boneheaded he can be about it too. She didn't say anything to that. She observed Naruto, and then reached out again. But instead of touching his forehead, her hand cupped his cheek, a motion that was grandmotherly. Then when, she told him. He nodded. I will. As she withdrew her hand, he looked at Black Zetsu. He looked different now since the blonde recognized him as the will Kaguya had manifested. What about you? Are you going to help me? I already did, he replied. There's some information on your Omni tool. Open it up when the Reapers come back and things have taken a turn for the worse. He looked down at his arm. When did you do that? When you weren't looking, he answered. He stepped closer to Kaguya. By the way, thanks for bringing me back to Mother. It's what I wanted from the beginning. He dissolved into a black liquid and ran up her arm. Let's go, Mother. It's up to him. She nodded in agreement. Without another word, she began to sink down back into the moon, taking Black Zetsu with her. Naruto watched silently until she was gone completely, and the crack she created sealed up again. He saluted. Farewell, Kaguya, commander of the Silent. He turned back and started walking back to the ship. Gal, what happened this time? Kurama asked, reappearing in Naruto's mind. So did the others. Naruto smiled. Nice to have you guys back. What happened, Gaki? Gyuki looked around. And where's Black Zetsu? It's a bit of a story. I'll tell you about it later. Why not tell it now? Shikaka asked him. Because I'm trying to figure out how to explain to Hackett and Anderson why I disappeared from the island and ended up on the moon. Oh yeah, that's important. Just as important as getting off this moon and go back to Earth in one piece, Sun added. Naruto stopped just in sight of the ship when the Yambi said that. Fuck, he swore. Sun had a point. He wasn't exactly handy with piloting a ship. This was going to be harder than he thought. He kept walking towards the ship, cursing Black Zetsu the entire way. He just knew that damn creature was laughing his now liquid ass off at his trouble. Codex Entry, Humanity and the Systems Alliance Rikidzenin, known to all as the first god of shinobi, a title shared with the Shodame and Sandame Hokage, the Rikudo Sennin is a figure that is nearly mythical. If it wasn't for clans claiming they're descended from the man, such as the Uchiha, the Senju, and the Uzumaki clans to name a few, he would be written off as a legend. Early records do not reveal much. What they do reveal was that the Rikudo Sennin, which translates into English as the Sage of the Six Paths, fought the monster known as the Jubi and defeated it by sealing it inside of himself, gaining its power. He used that power to bring peace to the elemental countries, establishing chakra and ninshu, the precursor to ninjutsu, trying to bring peace. His attempts were broken by his two sons, who fought each other over his teachings. At the end of his life, he split the Jubi into 9 separate pieces, see Biju. Later discoveries and records reveal that the Rikudo Sennin's name was Hagoromo, and he was the son of Princess Kaguya Otsutsuki. There has also been mention of a younger twin brother, but these records are vague and inconsistent. one of which claims the aforementioned brother went to the moon with his clan. What is also revealed is that Hagoromo was not limited to the elemental countries. Records have shown that he had traveled the entirety of the world, before and after his battle with the Jubi. It gives credence to the beliefs that he was the one who named the frontier, the one who ascended the mountain in order to speak to Kami for guidance, the one who helped establish city-states in the island kingdoms, and the one who trained the ancestors of Midgard under the assumed name of Heimdall. A key part of the Rikudo Sennin's mythical status and his power was that he was able to use the Rinnegan, one of, if not the most, rarest form of dojutsu. Its immense power helped him create his piece, but it also has the power to destroy. It is so rare that only 2 other humans have wielded Pain, now known as Nagato Uzumaki, the puppet leader of Akatsuki, and Naruto Uzumaki, who sealed himself away at the end of the Fourth Shinobi World War, and has now reawakened in modern times. Chapter 63, God is Knocking People. Location, Palaven. Geras hated being here, staring down at his mother's marker in the graveyard. "Hi, Mom," he said. I'm sorry for not coming back to see you." He tried to say something, anything else, but the words didn't come. "Geras?" He turned around and looked at his sister. "Solana." "I didn't think you'd come here," she remarked, walking up to his side. "Had to. I missed the funeral. If there was one thing he was sure their father would never forgive him for, it would be that. But he had been in the Traverse with Naruto when it happened. He got the message a day after they got away from the collector's ship." He looked back at the marker. "How was she?" "Content, although I think it was a bit of a brave face for us." That was as far as she wanted to know. She didn't want to know the truth. As the silence went on, she looked at her brother. "How did your talk with Dad go?" She didn't know much. When Geras came home, the first thing he did was go straight to their father's office. Whatever they talked about, it went on for hours. "He's going to help me." That had been what Geras hoped for. He had been uncertain about what he was doing even when he started talking. But their father didn't laugh, cut him off, or even order out of the room. He listened to his son as he explained everything that happened since he joined Naruto. And he believed it. "Help you with what?" she asked. Geras looked at his sister. He considered telling her what was coming. That had been the whole idea, coming back to Palaven, to tell the hierarchy what was coming and have them prepare. The Reapers were coming and everyone had to prepare. But he also knew there was going to be skeptics opposing him. A lot of the galaxy believed the Council line, that Sovereign had simply been a new kind of Geth's ship. For all he knew, Solana would be one of the skeptics. But he hoped that wouldn't be the case. For now, he would wait until he actually got somewhere. "Come on, let's go," he said, turning around and walking away. She followed, walking fast to match his pace. "So, what have you been doing all this time?" They talked infrequently since he quit CCC and never about what he was doing. She accepted it was because of unsecured channels, but that didn't stop her curiosity from wondering. "And what happened to this?" She reached for the medi patch on his mandible. He didn't flinch, but his grab was probably harder than it should have. "Don't," he told her. "Sorry." Now she felt like an idiot. She should have known he didn't like it being touched. "Still, what happened? A fire? Explosion?" "A severely determined woman," he answered with a straight face. The look she gave him told him what she thought of that, and what she was going to ask next. "No, it wasn't a date. She wasn't even going after me." Then, she stopped as she realized they made it home already. More than that, their father was waiting at the door. "Geras," Casti said once they were close, "I'll be meeting with the Primarch tomorrow. You're coming with me." "Yes, sir," he said immediately. Solana was more surprised herself. Just what happened that would make their father reach out to Primarch Fedorian? She knew the two of them were old friends, but he never used that connection before. Their father gestured to the door. "Come on, dinner's getting ready." As they followed him inside, he looked back with a smile. "And perhaps Geras can tell us just what he did to irritate a woman." His son groaned while his daughter tried not to giggle but failed. It helped ease the rest of the night. Location Earth. Naruto sat outside General Ramos's office. The chair was hard and itched against his back. But he didn't complain about it, nor did he try rearranging his butt to lose the itch. He leaned against it and rested his head on the wall. It was quite relaxing and he was almost tempted to fall asleep. But there was that matter of the itch. Kurama huffed impatiently. "Just how long does it take for a general to let you in?" he asked. It's already been a half hour since you came with your request. Relax, Fox. I'm asking to leave the island that I'm supposed to be imprisoned on, Naruto told him. And there's the fact that you already left the island without anyone's permission, Shikaka added. That wasn't my fault. We know that, Isabu assured him. We just don't think that everyone had bought your explanation. How are they could say I'm lying? It sounds so far-fetched and yet so close to the facts. They don't really have anywhere to argue. Also add in the fact that it was you giving them the bullshit story, Gyuki said. If this was a private conversation, he would have nodded. Exactly, he agreed with the Hachibi. The only people he told the truth about what happened on the moon were Hackett, Anderson, and the few who knew why he was actually on the island. Everyone else was fed a tale that Jiraiya could have written an Ika book about. He had said that a dark chakra, one that he hadn't known about until it was almost too late, had been playing havoc on him. It was something that had bubbled up to the surface during his missing years. He had been falling asleep, only to wake up later than he should have and not in the same place as before. Most people might have assumed that was because he had spent the night drinking so much that he blacked out. But Naruto would always tell them that he had never drunk that much in his life. If he had gotten drunk, he would never allow himself to black out and forget what could happen. He discovered that what was causing all of this was the black chakra of the Jubi. Since he had beaten it and took its chakra for his own, he had thought that was the end of it. But the Jubi lurked deep inside. It found a moment to try and take over. He had been fighting the chakra, resisting the urge it tried to overwhelm him with. But it had started to become a losing battle. The chakra manifested itself in a shadow that hovered in the corner of his eye, always disappearing whenever he turned its way. He felt like he was going insane. No one would believe him. He felt as if he was going to do something that he would regret. He had to be stopped before that happened. So, in desperation, he called the Church of the Nine, the ninth tail Shiro, and begged him to send priests to take him away, to safety so that he could not harm anyone. But the Jubi's chakra wiped his memory of that call. It left him confused and confronted him in his room the next night, hoping to finally take control. The church had already sent the priests to save him. They pulled him away from the chakra. Since his memory had been wiped, he did not know why they were taking him away and thought they were kidnapping him, which was why he tried to struggle free from them. They tried to take him back to the main church in the Land of Waves. But when the MPs arrived and started arresting the priests, the chakra of the Jubi found him. It took him away in a ship, up to the moon. There, it had hoped to take control of him, use him to find its body, and reunite. Once it had done so, it could descend to Earth and begin its destruction once more. But he had fought it. On the surface of the moon, where even the slightest mistake could have broken his suit and killed him, he omitted the fact that he would have been able to breathe by channeling his chakra around his mouth. It wouldn't have been as good a story if he could do that. He struggled with the chakra. In the end, he won. He plunged the chakra into the depths of his being and sealed it away. So long as he lived and was of his own mind, it would never escape and do harm to him ever again. Everyone he told the story to ate it up like free candy. The Biju couldn't stop laughing every time he told the story. He found it hard sometimes not to laugh with them. People just seemed to be so gullible. "Hey, Naruto?" said Komiai. "Yeah?" he said back. "You know the secretary is looking at you, right?" "Looking?" said Saiken with a scoff. "She is doing more than that." Naruto had a feeling he knew what they were talking about. Still, he had to be sure. "What exactly is she doing?" "Well, she's currently undressing you, throwing you onto her desk, and doing unspeakable kinky things to you," said Kurama, all with her eyes. "It's nice to be appreciated, isn't it?" Shikaka asked with a grin that could eat shit and still be clean. Matatabi swiped at him. "There's no need for that, Shikaku," she chastised him. "Hey, it's the truth." "Oh, you know what you should do?" Koko said to Naruto. Oh, he just knew he was going to regret this next question. "What?" "Go over there and talk to her. She'll probably have an orgasm just talking to you." "That'd be great." Sun roared with laughter. Yep, he regretted it. "That's not happening," he told them, staying in his seat and keeping his eyes closed. Shikaku actually pouted. "Oh, come on. It'd be fun." "For you," he retorted. "Well, duh." And his point was made for him. "No. I'm not doing that." "Would you do it if we said please?" "No." The Tanuki actually huffed at him. You are no fun. We're not asking you to fuck her right here in the office. Kurama paid attention, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. Hang on, what's with this we stuff? Shikaku ignored him. All we're asking is for you to go over there and flirt with her a little bit. I said no. He heard the door open. Sarah, the general said. Sir? Replied the secretary. He fell silent. Naruto took that to mean that he had just seen him. Ah, my lord, I did not see you there. He opened his eyes and looked up at the Marine general. He was a man whose gray hair was slowly turning to silver but carried himself like the military man he was. General Ramos, he greeted the man, standing up. His backside was glad to be away from that itch. There's no need to call me a lord. I'm just a shinobi. The secretary coughed, almost like she couldn't believe what he was saying. Be that as it may, my lord, the general said to him. Even if you don't want to be called that, you deserve that much respect. Ah, come on, I'm a jonin, the same as you. There was paused moment between them. All right, probably not just the same as you, he admitted. But it's in the general area. General Ramos just gestured back into his office. If you will come in, my lord? He said. It was clear that he wasn't going to budge on the subject. Naruto stifled a sigh of irritation. It wouldn't do to let that out. He walked into the room and stood attention before the desk. The general walked around the desk and sat down with an ease that showed he had been doing for a long time. What do you think he's going to say? Isabu asked. That's what I'm trying to find out, the blonde replied. General Ramos didn't waste any time. I apologize for making you wait out there that long, my lord. But you must understand that your request has put me in a bit of an awkward position. How so? He asked. You are technically imprisoned here on Semper Vigilavi, and that makes you my responsibility, he explained to the younger-looking man. He had been read in by Admiral Hackett as to why Naruto was supposed to be there. But even though he was supposed to be a prisoner, Naruto Uzumaki wasn't treated like one. Your episode 3 days ago could be seen as an attempt for prison break. Kurama was offended by his words. What does he mean attempt? He asked. You got out completely. Not worried about that right now. He's insulting your pride and dignity. You seem more insulted than I am. And besides, added Saiken, he can't claim he got out by himself. The Niners did it for him, and then Black Zetsu took over. I know that it might look like that, Naruto said to the general. But it wasn't. There are some who will have a hard time believing that. Like who? That's not important, he said dismissively. My lord, you know that you are on Semper Vigilavi for your own safety. I have heard reports of the tribe and the Akatsuki being brought to the public sight. Neither of them are happy with you. This is the safest place you can be right now. He knew that. He would have been just fine staying on the island. But going to the moon, meeting his ancestor, it woke up something inside of him. He wanted to see Earth again, see how it changed. He wanted to know what was different, and not be plagued by memories of what was or what could be. I understand your position, General Ramos, he said. I do. It's why I came to you with the request, and not just run off. I'm not suggesting I go without any sort of protection. The general did not look like he agreed with the sentiment. That's not how I heard it in your request, he said, frowning. I figured that security detail was something that we were going to have to haggle about. Haggle? He repeated incredulously. A security detail is not something to haggle about like prices at supermarket. Really? The blonde asked, surprised. That's how I've handled it with Tsunade whenever it came up. Not something to bring up with this guy, Kurama remarked. He ignored the fox. Look, how much personal do you think should go with me? He asked. Ramos arched an eyebrow. You're making it sound like you're already going. I thought it was best to talk about the security detail as if you've already agreed with my leaving the island. If I was to allow you to leave the island, and I heavily stress if, he said, I would not let you leave the island without a platoon of guards. A platoon? Repeated the blonde. That would just send out a big signal where I was. I'm not trying to make a spectacle here. That's why you're going to the Church of the Nine. Even though the general didn't let it show on his face, there was a lot of sarcasm. But Naruto had a response to that. I'm back on Earth and they can't reach me. If I don't go to them, they'll probably try to get me again. Ramos couldn't argue the point. It was well-founded. It seemed like every day that passed, the Niners got more and more fanatical. He remembered the time when everyone just thought that they were just a little bit out there. His Uncle Miguel had been a sixth tail, and he was never a fanatic. All right then, what do you suggest? He asked. A squad of people who can stay undercover so it would look like I'm alone, the shinobi answered. You want spears? Naruto had been thinking more of shinobi, but now the general had suggested it. That didn't sound like a bad idea. He had read about the spear section of heroes. They found the enemies and eliminated them. It made them good spies, especially undercover. Do you have marine spears to guard me? He asked. He nodded. I do. Would you be willing to give them to me as protection? He rubbed his forehead. It was clear that he was worried about the idea. I'm not happy about this, he told Naruto again. I know. I didn't bring this to you lightly. If he had wanted to do that, he would have gone to the general the morning after he got back from the moon. But I would like to see Earth and how it's changed. With one of those visits being Konoha? Asked Ramos. He looked right at him with an annoying look. They both knew that the living legend wanted to go home. He was surprised he didn't ask to go there first. Naruto nodded. Yes, I would like to go home. But that's where they'll be expecting me. No one would expect him to go visit the Church of the Nine. I hope you are prepared for them, my lord. If I'm not, there'll be a fun part to it. General Ramos looked at him with a question in his eyes. What fun part? He grinned. I'll be able to play around with them. It was certainly fun when he did it with Ruko. The general did not say anything about what those words could mean. As much as people worshipped Naruto Uzumaki as a savior, they were also well aware of his pranking ability. Well, so long as it's them and not my island, he thought to himself. I will think on this, Lord Naruto, he told the blonde. Please wait for my decision. He could have been annoyed by that answer. But annoyance would keep him on this island for good. So instead he said, Thank you, General, and left the office. The secretary was looking his way when he opened the door. She looked surprised at seeing him again, something that quickly changed into desire. There you see? Shikaka asked him. She wants you. Sun scoffed at that. What straight woman doesn't want him? Could we please stop talking about this? Naruto asked. It felt really uncomfortable. He noticed something on the secretary's desk. It was a photo of the secretary with a man and a little boy. They were her family. And she was eyeballing him like he was an ice cream that she wanted to start licking. Please let there not be trouble on the home front. Please let there not be trouble on the home front. It was a surprising thing to say, even for him. What makes you say that? Gyuki asked. There's a photo on her desk of her family. Yeah, and? If she's looking at me like that, there's probably trouble at home. Saiken couldn't believe those words were coming out of his mouth. You really think that's happening? It's a plausible reason. Here's another one. You are one hell of a good-looking guy, and she's admiring that fact. Women can do that, you know. He knew that. He wasn't that prudish. He just thought that if someone was married, then they had no need to look elsewhere for beauty. Wasn't that why they married in the first place? It felt so confusing to him sometimes. You know, maybe if I had someone explain this to me when I was a kid, I might get it. If someone had explained it to you when you were a kid, would you have listened? Kurama asked him. Valid point, he conceded. He did have a short attention span back then. It was a wonder Kakashi and Jiraiya were able to get him to do anything that didn't have to do with being a shinobi. Thank you. Now just go over there and talk to her. Why? To soothe your troubled conscience, he said blandly. Now hop to it. There was a tone to the fox's voice that said he wasn't going to give up on the idea. The blonde walked over to the desk. Hello, he said to the secretary. She blinked and realized that he was much closer than before. Oh, my lord, she said, her words jumbling with each other. He stopped her before she continued. Please, there's no need to call me lord. But it wouldn't be respectful. He waved it off. I have a feeling that I'll live regardless. He smiled easily and she couldn't help but laugh a little too. He directed his eyes towards the photo. Your family? He asked her. She looked at the photo too. He watched her eyes shine with joy at the boy but clouded with doubt at the sight of the husband. There was definitely trouble on the home front. Yes, those are my boys, she said, a mixed pride in her voice. He heard it. Is everything all right? She looked at him, surprised that he had asked her that. The surprise quickly vanished, replaced with a look of nicety. It came so quickly that not only did he know it was fate, she had also done it before. Yes, everything is fine, she told him. He didn't believe her for a second. Are you sure? She started, only to stop. She struggled for a moment, trying to find the right way to address him. Sir, she finally said, I'm sure that you have more important things to worry about than me and my life at home. He looked back at the general's door. Considering I have to wait on the general now, I'd say that I can listen to you if you got trouble with your family. He shifted to a more casual stance, making him seem less threatening. She was a little stunned by how willing he was to listen. She didn't think that such a legendary person would lower himself to listen to mundane problems. A part of herself said not to say anything. Her problems were hers alone. He didn't need to hear them. But another part suggested that he meant well and wanted to see if he could help any way he could. She weighed her choices. In the end, she wanted to talk to somebody about this, and he was there. It's my husband, Ian, she began. What about him? He's been gone too long on duty? She shook her head. No, it's not that. He's stationed here on the island. I think that he's about to have an affair. Oh, that wasn't good, at least to him. His tenants, on the hand, had something else to say. You know, that's probably the first time I think someone said about to when it comes to affairs, Matatabi remarked. Usually they're already convinced they're having an affair. Maybe it's the early days? Saiken suggested. Kurama was impressed. If that's the case, that is one prospective human, he declared. Naruto ignored them. He was more focused on the secretary. Sarah, right? He asked her. She nodded. Yes, my name's Sarah. She felt a little embarrassed once she was done talking. Of course, he knew her name. He had heard the general say it when he poked his head out of the office. What makes you think that your husband is about to have an affair? She looked at the office door again, checking to see if General Ramos would come out at any second. Well, his unit got a transfer a month ago. It's someone he knew back in training Megan. They were close friends but were put in different units. And that was the first time they got back together? He asked her. She nodded. He could see where this was starting to go. There was a question he was going to ask Sarah that she probably didn't want to hear herself answer. But he didn't see any way else to continue the talk. Is she pretty? No, not pretty, she said with a defeated tone. She's beautiful. I've seen her take that blonde hair out of the bun, and all the men stared. Plus, the training the Marines go through has given her a body that I would kill for. She's got a great laugh and a sense of humor. And she has so much in common with Ian, I feel like an outsider. Once Naruto heard that, he figured that she had a little self-esteem problem. If it was about her body, she didn't see what he was seeing. She didn't have the body of a model, but she wasn't obese. She actually looked quite fit. Her body showed that, and a hint of curves too. She wore a pair of glasses over brown eyes and her black hair was pulled back into a tail. He had a feeling that if she took off the glasses and pulled her hair free, she would look quite different. Is there anything else? Yes, she said with a short nod. It's just that I don't think we have that same spark we had when we started dating. Spark? He repeated with a confused look. You know, she said, only to stop. Sorry, I forgot. Now he was even more confused. Forgot what? You don't know what I'm talking about when I say the spark, right? He shrugged. Unless you're talking about the kind of spark you need to make to set off an improvised bomb, I'm going to say no. She stared at him like he had just told one great tall tale to her. Long story, he said. Yeah, like a month long, Kurama remarked. He glared inwardly at the fox. Shut up, he ordered. He told Sarah, please explain. She didn't really know how to explain the spark. Everyone she knew just knew what the spark meant. She had to find the right words to explain it to him. It's that feeling you get when you're with that one special person. Every time you look at him, that feeling just goes down to your stomach and makes it do a happy little dance. Everything just seems better, brighter, and more magical when you're with them. She hoped that would be a good enough of an explanation because she really didn't know how else to explain it. But his eye brightened with recognition. Oh, I understand. You're talking about intuition. I was? Yeah, he said. Intuition could be used to describe many things. One of them would be romance. Now that was cleared up, he could get back to the matter at hand. She felt like they no longer had that, to borrow her word because it just sounded better, spark. There was only two ways he could see that happening. He was more inclined to lean towards the nicer one of the two. How long have you two been married? The kid in the photo looked like he was about 9 years old. So it was probably that long, if not a little bit longer. About 15 years. Ah, I see what you think the problem is. You do? He couldn't say this from experience but rather from the knowledge Jiraiya had beaten into his head about this kind of stuff. Despite his being a super pervert and a ladies' man, Jiraiya was at heart a romantic. It would explain why he never gave up on Tsunade. The spark you're talking about? That's for young lovers. You've been together for so long you've taken that spark and molded it into a flame that warms you both. Of course you won't get that same feeling when you look at him. But you look at him all the same and you still know that you want to wake up every morning and see his face on the other side of the bed. As she listened to his words, she felt that what he said was right. Every time she woke up and looked at her husband's face, she was happy and content to see him. Every time she woke up and saw he wasn't there, she hoped that he would come home safe. But did he feel the same way for her? She hoped that he did, but the way he was starting to stay out late made her worry. Since she had thought that he was beginning to have an affair, she had considered doing the same. It was why she had looked at Naruto so, and who could blame her? He looked amazing. She hadn't done anything about it, but the thought was still there in her mind. What do you suggest I do? She asked the blonde. Are you considering a divorce? He asked back. She shook her head instantly. No, of course not, she told him. Okay, that was a bit of a lie. She had thought about it. But she didn't have any actual proof that her husband was having an affair. Besides, she had to think about her son. A divorce wouldn't be good for Sean. Good. Don't do that. What you should do is just talk to your husband, see what he thinks about the entire thing, and let him know what you feel about what you think is going on. If he does love you, he will do the same thing for you. But what if I feel he's only saying what I want to hear? He looked down at her, fully concerned about it. Do you trust your husband? She wanted to, she truly did. But there was that fear that he was doing what she thought he was doing and lying about it. I'd like to, she finally told him. Then trust him to say what he truly feels about it all. You could be surprised and find that they are just friends. That was her silent hope. But it was a frail hope. She had seen Megan and even she felt inadequate looking at what she had. And if that's not enough? What her husband eventually fell for that trap and slept with her. Then invite her over for dinner and have a threesome with her. It took her a moment to consciously realize what he had just said. When she did recognize those words, she could feel her face blanch and become shocked. What? She managed to say to him, looking at him like he was absolutely crazy. Naruto wasn't ashamed of what he said. If you can't beat them, bed them, he said, like he was reciting something. That's something Ero-sennin pounded into my head. She knew that he was talking about the Toad Sannin, Jiraiya. She had read about him, and she knew about what he was remembered for. But she didn't think that he would have gone that far. You can't seriously mean that he did something like that. He nodded. Believe it or not, it was an effective tactic of his. He used it a lot whenever he stepped in to help stop people fighting. If he got in between two warring families, he would take a son and a daughter of the family heads and toss them in a room. A year later, the families pretty much stopped fighting because the heads were grandparents. So you want me to do that? It was something she never would have considered before. But now, she couldn't keep it out of her mind. Naruto shook his head. No, that's up to you. But if you are going to go through with it, and you're nervous about it, just look at it in a different way. You would really get to know this Megan after sleeping with her. Just make sure your son is staying at a friend's house if you're going to do it. He was certain she and her husband would like to avoid that conversation. She gulped, still trying to believe what he was saying. I can't believe that Jiraiya would do something like that. He shrugged his shoulders. There was a reason he took no shame in being called a super pervert. But that wasn't all he was. He remembered the man as one who believed in love and romance, who wanted to keep the peace between everyone even if he had to use unusual tactics. Cammy, he missed that perverted bastard. Sarah pushed that shocking idea away. She had a chance to ask a few things of the man in front of her. My lord, might I ask you 2 questions? Sure, go ahead. Are you planning to start Ika Ika again? Out of all the things he expected her to ask, that hadn't been one of them. He actually had to take a moment to make sure that he had heard her right. A fan of the series, are you? He asked. If she was, it was a wonder that she was so shocked by the idea he gave her. All the stuff that Jiraiya wrote in those books came from personal experience. Her cheeks blushed slightly. They are surprisingly good. My book club had wondered about that question for some time now. It seems like your books are liked by a lot of people, Jiraiya, he thought to himself with a sense of amusement. It seemed like he kept finding fans of the Erosenin in the most unexpected places. I hadn't given it much thought, he told her. But at the moment, I don't think I will. She looked disappointment. I see. I hope that changes. He didn't think that it would. He felt like if he tried to write Ika Ika, half-assed would probably be the best that he would be able to come up with. He didn't have half the life experience that Jiraiya had. Anyway, he focused on the next thing. What's your second question? Embarrassment overrode the disappointment. Do you think that there's any chance I could an autograph from you for my son? She asked. She looked down at her son in the photo. Sean keeps saying that you're one of his heroes and wants to be like you when he grows up. A smile came onto his lips. So he wants to be a shinobi, huh? I think so, but he seems to be more concerned about pranking people than that right now. She looked up at him. Like I said, he wants to be like you. He laughed a little, the smile getting wider as he did. Sure, I can do that for you. You got a pen and a paper? She handed him both and he got to work. He quickly wrote down what he felt that Sean wanted to read. To Sean, keep up with your pranks and be sure to remember them when you become a shinobi. Once you think you've reached my level, come find me and we shall meet in pranking combat. Naruto Uzumaki, the lord of the pranks. He put the pen down and offered the paper back to her. She took it and read it. He's going to love this, she said with a happy smile. Thank you, my lord. It was nothing, he told her, waving it off. You have a good day now, okay, Sarah? She nodded and replied, you too. He started for the door, pausing to look back at her. And remember what I told you about your husband. She blushed again but nodded all the same. General Ramos agreed to his proposal at the end of the day. He met his security group, Spears like he had asked. They were a squad, for men who dressed nondescriptly. They introduced themselves as Alec, Clays, Dre, and Nils. Their faces were the kind that could fade into the crowd. Naruto had wondered if that was something they were taught. On the shuttle ride, he did ask them. Alec answered, his impassive face breaking into a grin. It was something they were taught when they trained to be heroes. He offered to teach the blonde how to do it, and that was how they spent the ride. When the shuttle landed at the port, Naruto threw on a black cloak and pulled the hood up over his head. Commander, that's not necessary, said Dre, the youngest of the four. His brown hair pulled back in a tail, and he had a pleasant smile, all of which could hide the fact that he was packing an M6 Carnifex underneath his coat. Alex snorted. I would say that it is necessary, he declared, making sure his combat knives were strapped and sheathed against his coat. He was the one who looked the most military, his hair cut short. Nils agreed with a nod of his head, while he slipped brass knuckles into his coat. He was the most silent, and the one who could fade into a crowd the best. He barely said anything during the ride. Clays checked his Omni-tool. He was the shield of the four, literally. His Omni-tool had the ability to activate the tower shield of his counterparts. He steps outside without something covering his head and we're going to have a stampede, he said, his Midgardian accent thick in his voice. Actually, I was thinking more along the lines of a grand reveal to the church, Naruto told the four of them. But the stampede is a good point too. Are we really going to go to Niner HQ? Asked Alec. I can think of a lot better things to do. Yeah, agreed Clays. Only someone not in their right mind would even think about going there. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. No one's really ever called me sane, so I think I'm good. The Spears paused when they realized what had just been implied. He laughed. Don't worry. I won't hold it against you. Dre stood up from his seat. So, what's the game plan here? He asked. As soon as he did, they all became serious. The blonde looked out the window. All he could see was the port. It looked like any other port he had seen across the galaxy. It was lay beyond that made him nervous. It was the land of waves, but not the one he knew. It would be completely different. Take a breath, he told himself. He had wanted to come here. When we get out there, you four fade into the crowd. It has to look like I'm alone. They all nodded in acknowledgement. Alec went to his seat at the helm. He opened the shuttle's hatch, and they watched as it opened with a silent hissing sound. Naruto looked out the hatch at what lay beyond. You going to move any time soon? Kurama asked. Yeah, just give me a moment. Okay, moment's done. Get moving. He glared inwardly at the fox but stepped out the hatch anyway. The first thing that hit his senses was the smell. He took a deep inhale of the smell. It was the same as the last time he was here, the smell of the sea mixed with the riverside. It smelled less pure, but he could still smell it all the same. He walked to the port's exit. Since they had landed in a private port, reserved for the Marines who needed to make a quick trip, there was one in every port on Earth. There was only one entrance and exit. At the exit, he looked out at the city. He smiled at the sight of it. It grew. No longer was it the village that could barely get by. He saw a city that stretched for miles and miles. Tazuna, Inari, you would have been proud to see what's become of this place. Dre came up beside him. Glad to be back? He asked. He nodded. Oh yeah, he agreed. Well, the view's nice. Come on, said Alec. We need to get moving. The church is on the other side of the city, and we probably want to get there before the next mass. Oh yay, a mass about us, Shikaka said. The others stared at him. You know, I'm not sure if you're being sarcastic or not, Sun told the Tanuki. Kurama nodded. It's usually easy to tell too. Shikaka just preened. I do have my moments. Naruto mentally rolled his eyes at the lot of them. Lead the way, he told Alec. He didn't start walking right away. Instead, he reached up and checked his calm check-in. Everybody. Got you, Dre answered. Cleas nodded. Same. Nils said good. I hear you too, Naruto told him. Like I said, lead the way. They walked away from the port. Once they became a part of the crowd, the spears faded into them. They kept their distance from Naruto, staying in a rough square formation. To the obvious eye, Naruto would have looked like he knew where he was going. He was actually subtly following Nils while the spear led him to the church. He looked around at the city as he walked. As before, he could not see the village that this place had been. There wasn't even a hint of it. But 2,000 years would do that to any kind of place. I hope I will still be able to recognize Konoha, he thought to himself when he realized the same could be said for his home. Kurama snorted. You'll be fine there. How do you know that? Gaki, you might have called it a village, but the place was a city. Villages turn into towns, towns turn into cities, and cities just get bigger. Trust me. You'll be able to recognize it. He still wasn't sure, but he wasn't going to argue the point. If he started arguing with the fox, he would not take in the city like he wanted to. So he turned his attention back to that. The city had a relaxed feeling to it, he realized as he walked through the crowds. He saw a lot of people dressed more casually than formally. A lot of families were walking together, happy smiles on their faces. He wondered what it was all about. He looked up. The sky was cloudy but not heavily. The sun was pleasantly warm, and so was the wind that breezed through the air. The smell of the sea and the river floated into his nose again. The sounds of all the people talking didn't have a frenzied or hurried edge to it like he had heard in other cities and other planets. All of these things made him realize something. This place was most likely a resort city, a place where people could go and relax, have a vacation. I wonder if Tazuna or Inari would have approved of what their home had become, he wondered as he followed Nils around a corner. From the corner of his eye, Dre walked across the street to the other side. There's trade flowing through the place. I'd say they'd be happy, Kurama told him. It could be something else, Gyuki said. How so? He asked. The Hachibi gestured out to the city. This might be only the resort part of town. The other side of the city may hold the business center. Not every place can be like Ilium. It was a good point. Fair enough, he replied. The street became engulfed in a shadow. He looked up and saw the shadow was caused by a tram line up above. This wasn't the first time he had seen something like this, but the sight still impressed him, all the same. He checked Nils and saw him going up the steps to the station. He followed about 5 steps behind with Clea's 3 steps behind him. People crowded the station platforms like they did down on the streets. When he reached the top of the stairs, he lost sight of Nils. He looked around quickly and found the quiet spear standing in front of the line map. He walked over to it and stood next to him. They looked like 2 strangers. Where are we going? He asked in a whisper. Nils didn't answer verbally. He raised his hand and traced the blue line with his finger. His eyes followed the finger, and his lips mouthed the name of each station, trying to make sure it was etched in his mind. Naruto stepped away, knowing where they were going now. He turned his eyes up, trying to find the screen that told him what line would be coming in next and how soon. Luckily, the next tram would be the blue line, and it was only going to be a few minutes. He waited in silence, wondering which end the tram would be coming from. He heard the sounds of it coming from his left, and promptly turned that way, watching it come into the station. The first time he had seen a tram, he had thought it was some kind of gigantic snake. That impression still hadn't left him. The tram was long and clean, its gray metal glinting silver in the sunlight. It came to a stop with barely a hiss. The doors opened and the people flooded out. They came out so quick, Naruto was almost afraid that he wouldn't be able to get on. Then the tide ebbed and he was able to cross into the tram car. His hand found a pole and held onto it. Nils walked in and took a seat, looking like he fell asleep. Alec and Cleas were further down the car while Dre was close by, looking out the window. The doors closed and Naruto felt the car start moving beneath his feet. The sight beyond the window moved slowly at first, and then started to pick up speed. It became like a moving picture. It was interesting but only just. Now would be the time to wait. He leaned against the pole and kept a seemingly vague watch over everything. I wonder what it's going to look like. What? Asked Isabu. Shikaku rolled his eyes and said to the turtle, What do you think? He's talking about the church, right? Of course he's talking about the church. Sun frowned. Ease up on him, Shikaku. The tanuki frowned back at him. Come on, Sun. We all know that was what he was talking about. Even Isabu knew it. Then why did he ask the question? He opened his mouth but Isabu spoke first. Actually, I thought Naruto was talking about the business sector of the city. What? Said Saiken, why would you think that? We were talking about it, and we're on a tram line. Odds are that we'll be going through it while going to the church. He does have a point, Naruto added. The car came to a stop and doors opened. People got off. People got on. He noticed that the clothes were becoming less casual. The turtle might be onto something. Thank you, Naruto, Isabu said, preening a little at the praise. Shikaku rolled his eyes. Oh brother, he groaned. Yes, do you need something? Kurama asked. The other Biju laughed at that. Even Naruto cracked a small smile. Shikaku glared at the fox. Thanks, Kurama, just what I needed, he said with the utmost sarcasm. The fox just gave him a little wave of the tails that was both insulting and sarcastic. Don't mention it. Guys? Said Isabu. What? They both said, one casual, one irritated. Any chance we can get back on point? The tanuki started gnashing its teeth in anger. That's rich coming from you. Leave him be, Shikaku, Matatabi told him off. He glared at her but she remained firm. The staring contest kept going for another stop. Naruto could feel their glare inside his head and quite frankly, it was getting annoying. Guys, talk. Stop with the staring, he ordered them. You were talking about the city, right? He's right, Komi agreed. Let's get back on the church. Anyone got an idea of what it'll look like? Shikaku was more than happy to move on to the actual subject. Whatever it's going to look like, it's going to be big. Yeah, it is, Kurama agreed. Saiken pretended to be surprised. Whoa, they agreed on something. Shut up, Saiken, they said at the same time. Once they realized they did that, they glared at each other. Koko moved past that. They're right. It's going to be big. A head church of a religion that spans through the galaxy is definitely not going to be small. I'd be willing to bet money that it's going to be big enough to have its own area code. You don't have any money, Naruto told him. That's beside the point. How much gold do you think the place is going to be covered in? Komi wondered. Huh? The Kabutomushi cast a look at the blonde. Everyone who's got money and power uses gold as a decoration. It's like a standard rule. That sounded a little ludicrous to him. That's a little over the top, he remarked as the tram stopped again. Of course it's over the top. That's the whole point. That much gold? He said in disbelief, talk about tasteless. Again, that's the whole point. No one ever accused of people who used gold as decoration had taste. The more gold you see, the more tasteless you are. Come on, you remember Ton Actus's house, right? He stifled a groan. Oh good Kami, yes, he said. The thought of that gem-encrusted stair rail could make him gag. Gyuki added, there's going to be a huge statue of Naruto somewhere in there. That he didn't want to see. No. Please, no. It's going to happen. You know it is. But I don't want it to. Kurama huffed. His Jinchuriki was going to need a spine of steel for what they were going to be dealing with next. Suck it up, Naruto. You're the one who wanted to come here. I know, he said. The tram stopped again and the people went in and out. I'm beginning to regret the idea. Suck it up, the fox told him again. Just remember why you wanted to come to this place, and go see the religion that's been built around you. So he can see what they've built, and gloat about it. Shikaka asked with an innocence that sounded so real, everyone knew it was false. They all glared at him, the Kyuubi most of all. You know that's not why he's doing this, he said. Why would you say that? The Tanuki shrugged his shoulders and looked smugly at him. I felt like it. Naruto cut across the fighting before it could even start. I know why am I here, furball, he said. Kurama arched an eyebrow. Do you? He asked. He wasn't asking, actually. He was just going through the motions, making sure that his Jinchuriki was prepped for what was to come next. I do. Why don't I believe you? He smirked to himself. He knew what the fox was doing now. He responded in kind. That's because you're a hard-headed, sand-filled, stuffed nose of a fox with one too many tails. Huh, that's tough talk coming from a knucklehead, ramen-loving idiot who had only a crap-ass jutsu to start with. Hey now, don't go disrespecting the Oroku no jutsu. The fox snorted in derision, while his tails lashed through the air. I will disrespect anything I want to about you. Please remember that I'm the one who's had to put up with you the longest. I could say the same thing about me with you. The tram came to a stop, slowing into the station. Nils came out of his supposed nap and stood up. That was Naruto's clue that this was the station was the one they were getting off at. He looked out the window, past the station, and out at the city. It had definitely changed from being a vacation spot. Now it looked like he was in the oldest part of the city. The buildings were made from wood and stone, like he remembered. When they weren't that, they were the more modern steel and concrete. But those buildings were the ones that looked out of place here. Naruto saw all those buildings against the others and thought they had been built around the others, like new people moving into a new area. He stepped out of the car and followed Nils onto the station platform. It looked more formal than the one they had left. It suited the city around them. They went down the steps and back out on the street. The other spears followed at a sedate pace, keeping away so the cover could be maintained. Nils led him through the city, past the tall buildings that seemed to be there for a long time. The people on the street didn't have a flow that moved in one way or another. Rather, they went in one direction, the direction that the five of them were going now. Naruto guessed that they were going to the church. There are a lot of them, he remarked. It is a religion that spans across the galaxy, Komiai reminded him. Is it surprising that there are so many of them? It's not a question of how many they are, Sun said. It's a question of how many of them are fanatics about it. Here's hoping that it's not a lot of them, Naruto said. We're going to the head church of the religion, Kurama told him. There's going to be a lot of them. He groaned silently. He already had to deal with a few of the Niner fanatics. One had been a priest of that religion, and he was certain that he had pissed the guy off enough to make him hate him. The other he had caused to make an entirely different religion. The way it was looking, those were going to be his two options. Do you think I'll be able to change all their minds if they all turn out to be religious nuts? He asked his tenants. Kurama thought about it. I wouldn't doubt it, he said. You do have the talent for it. But not all of them are going to be fanatics. That might be true. He just hoped that he would be able to convince the fanatics to stop if they got riled up. He went back to that fanatic back on Omega. That had created the travelers, and the two religions had been going at each other since then. He could only hope that he didn't start a war when he went to the head church. Their walking came to a stop when the sidewalk fed into a giant square. They stopped because Naruto stopped and looked at the square itself. Commander, what's wrong? Asked Dre, sounding quite concerned. He didn't answer the spear. He was too busy staring. You have got to be kidding me, he finally said, breathing it out with an air of disbelief. Oh, I see. It's there, Commander. You're not seeing anything. Right now, he wished that he was. The square was dominated by a large set of statues. But it wasn't just any statues. It was the 9 Biju all bowing down to a statue of him. The statue was wearing the most arrogant expression on its face and had on a robe that he never would wear in real life. His hands were spread out, as if he was dominating the Biju. Kurama was the one who stood in the middle, looking the most subservient. It clearly meant that he was the first one to be controlled. Naruto didn't like the statues. But he wasn't the only one. He could feel his tenants' anger stirring underneath. They were trying to stay calm, but the anger was threatening to boil out of control. "Guys?" he said. "I do not approve of that," Kurama said tightly. Shikaka nodded. "I agree. We need to do something about it," Gyuki declared. Sun growled deep in his throat. "How about we destroy it?" "Yes, that sounds good," Isabu agreed. "Like what you see, Commander?" Alec asked him. He was quick to respond. "No, I don't." "What the hell is this?" "I believe it's a statue of you, sir." He could see that. "Just how long has this thing been here?" Not sure," he answered without shame. "I think it's been a couple of centuries. People usually can find the head church just by looking for that." "That's going to change." "Agreed," said Kurama. Shikaka had an idea. "Let's destroy it now." "Yes," growled Matatabi. "I have an idea," Sun said. "Let's burn it." "Can you burn metal?" Koko asked him, absolutely serious. He nodded. "I can if I know I try hard enough." "That's not good enough." "Are you absolutely certain you can burn it?" "If he can't, I will," Matatabi declared. "Hey," asked Komiai, "what's wrong with an old-fashioned beatdown?" "That's for normal people," Kurama told the Kabutomushi. Gyuki agreed. "He's right. A beatdown wouldn't do anything for these statues." "I think what he meant to say was we should tear them down," Isabu said in Komiai's defense. That sounded much more plausible than trying to beat them down. The Nanabai nodded, grateful for the help. "Yeah, what he said." It's a plausible idea," Gyuki mused. Saiken saw a problem with the idea. "Hang on. If we're going to tear them down, who's going to do the tearing? Naruto can only transform into one of us at a time." "He hasn't even done that," Shikaku pointed out. "He's only changed into Kurama and it's a chakra form, not really him." "Not the point here. How about we just blow them up?" Kurama offered. "I think we'd all be satisfied with that." "Everything all right, Commander?" asked Dre through the calm. "I'm fine," Naruto said. "I'm just thinking of ways to destroy those statues." Good one," he said. The blonde waited. 3, 2, 1. You were kidding, right?" And he gets it, he thought. "I wasn't. That thing is a horrendous piece of garbage. I am offended by the sight of it alone." "Oh, well, sorry?" the spear offered. "Why are you apologizing? Did you help build it?" "No. Commander, we have to go inside now," Cleas told him. "The mass will start in 10 minutes. Ah yes, that's why he came here. He wanted to see his church in all its glory. Already he wasn't getting a good opinion of it all. I'm going. We'll be watching." Kurama snorted in amusement. That would have sounded like a stalker coming from anyone else. Naruto ignored the fox as he walked past the statues. He swung around to the left and saw the church come into sight. Unfortunately, his tenants had hit all the nails on the spot. The place was as big as the statues and it looked like it had gold everywhere. The only things that didn't have gold were the windows and the concrete. "Oh, Kami, help me," he moaned when he finally got a good look. The place dominated half the square. "Yep, nailed it," Shikaku declared. "I don't think I've seen so much gold," Komiai remarked. He tried to figure out if he was impressed or disgusted by the sight. "And we haven't even seen the inside yet," Sun said. "Odds were the inside was going to be much worse than the outside." Kurama agreed with the Yonbi. What they were seeing was just the icing on the cake. They still had to get to the cake. "Get moving, Naruto." He went forward, joining the people already heading into the church. The closer he got to the front, he saw more and more priests and priestesses leading the people into the church. He found the doors really big, like they were trying to match Konoha's gate big. The hall inside was even bigger. He glanced up at the vaulted ceiling. He could probably throw a kunai up there, and it would come back down with touching the ceiling. At the other end there were multiple doors, lined up in a row. The priests were all going into different doors, but the people who weren't were all going through one door. "Guess that's where we're going," he thought. "How about the door on the other side?" suggested Komiai. No one's going through that one. He glanced at that door and saw no one was going through it. The door next to it had a few priests going through it. The next door had more people, and so on it went until he was looking at the door he had to go through. No, he said, not that one. Why? I've got the feeling that's where the ninth tails go. All the more reason to do it, the Nanabai insisted. No, not yet, he replied. I want to see what this church has to offer before I make a scene. Kurama found that amusing. Nice to see you have priorities. You usually just rush right in when it comes to your pranks. That is slander of the highest degree. He had always planned out his pranks. He rushed into everything else. He followed everyone through the door. He noticed how heavily laden with gold the door was, and he suppressed a shudder at the sight of it. The room on the other side was simply a staircase that spiraled upward. He followed the people. He couldn't see an end to the stairs. They just seemed to keep going up. If he wasn't a shinobi, he might have gotten exhausted by the time he reached the top. Naturally, he was irritated when he saw the elevator. Why didn't I just take that up? The doors were closed, and you were focused on the stairs, Shikaku told him. Oh. Never mind then. He came out onto a tier that spanned the length of the enormous hall. There were rows both up and down from the entrance. Looking around, he felt more like he was in the Konoha Stadium watching the Chunin exams. He was tempted to go down the steps and check to see if there was a fighting ring down below. He did go to the rail and look down, but there was no fighting ring. What he saw were more tiers, about 8 more. They curved along the wall, descending with each tier, and getting smaller too. The last tier had the fewest priests, who wore robes made out of 8 different colors. Those must be the 8th tails. Gyuki looked down at them. So, those are my priests, huh? I guess so. The more he looked, the more he wasn't impressed. Is that it? Looks like it. Great, just great, he grumbled. Who were you expecting? Shikaku asked him. Big burly men who looked like they were actual bulls? I had the thought, yes. Most of these guys look like they couldn't even pick up a cardboard box. He had seen fat men before, but these guys took the cake altogether. Kurama looked around. Where are my priests? He asked. The most colored robes he saw were the 8th tails. He saw none who wore 9 colors. It was quite irritating. Naruto looked down at the church again. He saw the floor was empty save for a podium and a line of chairs, each ostentatious. Behind the podium was another statue of him that was nearly as tall as the hall. This had the same arrogant look like the one he had seen outside, but it also looked like it was trying to look serene at the same time. He wasn't quite sure if it worked or not, but no one else was saying anything about it. Maybe it was just him. The statue's arms were spread wide, as if it was welcoming them all. Perhaps that added to the attempted sereneness. Beneath the statue was a door. He wouldn't have seen it if he didn't look at everything. It blended in so well with the gold slathered on the walls and the statues. He looked down at the chairs. That was probably where the 9th tails would be sitting. Down there, he told the fox. I've seen the chairs, Gaki. I'm wondering where my priests are. Maybe they start this entire thing? Komiai offered. It made sense since they were the highest rank. The question was answered when doors down below opened. 9 men and women walked out and took their seats. That was apparently the signal for the chatter in the hall to die down. Everyone took a seat and Naruto did the same, close to the rail. Alright, time for the show, he thought. Here's hoping it's a good one, Saiken offered. Kurama snorted derisively. I wouldn't bet money on it. Naruto saw how others were bowing their heads and moving their lips. He didn't know what that was about. Alec? He whispered. They're praying, Commander, the spear whispered back to him. For what? He asked. Not sure. I think it's just regular prayers. There was no such thing as a regular prayer. That meant each religion shared the same prayer. That didn't happen. Well, since he didn't know the prayer, there was nothing he could do about it. He kept sitting and waiting. Commander? Whispered Dre. Yes? Shouldn't you take your hood off now? We're inside. Not yet. There was a small pause before he spoke again. Not yet? Yeah, not yet, he repeated. The moment wasn't right. He wanted to wait. Hey, look down there, Shikaku said. At what? Said Isabu. He gestured down at the next tier. Look at my priests. Masato is down there. They all looked down. Masato was sitting amongst the first tails, close to the front. Seeing the kid sitting there, Naruto noticed something. He looks nervous. Matatabi didn't know why he would look nervous. Why's that? She wondered. Think it has something to do with happened back on the island? Komiai offered. Shikaka was a little vexed at that idea. After all, this was one of his priests. Why would he be worried about that? Naruto didn't know why Masato would be nervous. The kid had a good heart. He knew that from their talk. One of the ninth tails stood up and walked up to the podium. Be welcome to the hall of Naruto Uzumaki, he said in a clear voice. I am Shiro, priest of the ninth tail. Please rise. Naruto came to his feet. So this is the man I supposedly called. The priest wasn't fat like some of the higher-ranking priests or priestesses. He looked fit, but the robe didn't give him a flattering appearance. His hair was slicked back, which highlighted the fact that it was receding. His voice was strong and smooth. He knew what he was speaking about. Everyone in the hall started singing. At first, he didn't know what they were singing about, but it quickly became clear that they were singing about him, or rather his glory. Some people might have found that appealing and soaked it all up. He just found it off-putting. This is really disturbing. How's that? Asked Sun. They're literally singing your praises. That's what's disturbing. When the music finally stopped, everyone sat down. I bring sad news, began Shiro. Once again, the Marines on Semper Vigilavi have again refused to allow us to bring our lord here so that he may recover here, amongst his followers. Oh good Kami, he's starting with that? He might not be much of a religious person, he accepted that Kami was out there and left it at that, but he knew that was a horrible way to start this. But the rest of the people in the hall all sighed in disappointments. There were even audible groans, going all the way down to the first tier. I think they're buying it, Kurama told Naruto. That just makes it worse. You want to stop it now? Go right ahead. It was tempting. It was very tempting. But if he did the big reveal right now, he wouldn't hear the rest of what was to come. And he had a feeling that he needed to hear what came next. No, we're going to wait. Ugh, could we just get this over with? They're already in my bad book, and the guy hasn't even started talking yet. We're waiting. There is no need for sadness, the priest continued, for we know that our Lord will see the truth of things and come to us soon. He's not wrong, Isabu remarked. No one paid attention to that. They were focused on the sermon, if it could be called that. Shiro certainly knew how to use his voice when he spoke. It is not our place to judge our Lord for what has happened. He is not to blame when he landed on an alien planet. He is not to blame for being poisoned by the lies they feed him. What lies? His time on Thesha had been very informative. They helped him acclimate to the time. Is he upset that I'm not a howling bigot? Seems like it, Kurama said. He is not to blame when they fed him beliefs about how great the council and all it held is great. When we heard he was brought into the specters, we did not blame him for a choice most likely thrust upon him. Like hell it was. I was given a decision. I chose to try and become a specter. In fact, we should praise our Lord for joining the specters. For in doing so, he has held to the promise that he made to us all. He would protect us all so that we might live lives of peace and happiness. He did not think of himself when he did this. For our Lord is never selfish and places us over himself. The fox couldn't believe what he was hearing. The guy is making you out to be some kind of saint. I know. I can hear him, Naruto replied. He looked around and saw how everyone was eating up every word spoken. They were actually hanging on the priest's speech. But while we are thankful for his sacrifice, we implore him to stop and look. We are ready. We are to stand at his call and fight on his behalf. He does not need to sacrifice himself, not for those who don't care about what he has done nor for those who dismiss him because he is a human. He need only call upon us, and we would come. His voice rose sharper on that last word. It echoed through the hall. While Naruto just rolled his eyes at the theatrics, it got to the others. He heard a few people from all across the tiers shout in agreement. They're certainly buying all of what he's saying, the blonde remarked as he listened to the shouts. The priest raised his hands and the people began to settle. It is heartening to see how much you all believe in what is right. I share in your hope that our Lord will come and ask for our aid. We will give it gladly. If he calls, we will come to his aid. We will fight those who look down upon us. If he calls, we will come and put the high and mighty council in their place. If he calls, we will come and destroy the heretical travelers that pervert our Lord's word. This was just getting ridiculous. He's going after the travelers? They're the ones who are actually doing what I think the church should be doing. Yuki looked at everyone. Okay, I think we're all in agreement now? Oh yeah, this has got to go, Shikaku agreed instantly. Komiai nodded. Can we make it go away now, please? Naruto shook his head. Not yet. Oh, come on. We've heard enough. Not yet. He wanted to hear the rest of this. He probably wasn't going to like what he heard, but he needed to hear it. If he calls, we will come. Shiro shouted to the hall, and they all went wild for it. But he raised his hands once more. It took a little bit longer for them to settle, but they did. But until he calls, we will wait. We will worship him and pray that he will come to this holy place so that we might share the truth with him and free him from the lies that have plagued him. All 9 of the Biju were tempted to say wish granted, but they knew it wouldn't do anything. Naruto was focused on the mass. They stayed silent and watched alongside him. They found it really disturbing how easily everyone else seemed to eat up every word that was spoken. Naruto had the same worry. He also wondered if the spears were being converted by listening to all of this. He shook his head and got rid of that notion. They weren't like that. They were professionals. What about the 10th tail? Someone called out. Naruto instantly tried looking for where it came from, but it was gone too fast, and no one outed themselves. Shiro looked up at the tiers. He was looking for the speaker too. But he didn't find them. So instead he addressed it. What of the 10th tail? He asked. No one replied. I know we've all heard about this supposed person, this herald, this voice of our Lord. Some have said that he found her on the edge of space, a wild beast of a woman that he tamed and taught. Some have said she came to him, begging for him to kill her, only for him to give her a new purpose. Some have even said that he took a piece of his flesh and created her from that. Naruto rolled his eyes at that. 2 of those are lies. The last is one I made up. I dunno, those descriptions fit Ruko pretty well, Saiken remarked. I say to you all this, if this 10th tale is real and true, let her present herself to the church. Let her show us that she is what she has claimed to be. Let us hear the truth of the matter from her mouth. Better yet, let her call upon our Lord himself so that we might hear the truth from his lips. If he says that it is true, then we will welcome her into the fold of our church. He spread his arms wide. Let her come now. Nothing happened. Shiro lowered his arms. If she is not here, then we shall not treat her as a part of this church. Our holy duty is to serve at our Lord's command. We wait for his order for us to rise up and bring the council to heel. He waved his hand in a dismissing gesture. Until this herald of our Lord comes forth, we shall hear no more of this. Kurama huffed. That was a quick dismissal. Shiro left the podium. An 8th tail stood up and looked at the hall. When he spoke, Naruto was surprised. For a fat man, the priest had a voice that boomed across the walls. We will now sing Psalm 89, let the Biju's light shine down upon us. The music started up again and everyone stood. This time, they weren't singing about Naruto, something that he was glad for. Instead they sang about his tenets. He waited for their reactions as the song went on. The wait didn't last long. Okay, now I know what you were talking about, Sun said. It is a little unnerving. I hear that, Isabu agreed. And it's a bit grating on the nerves. Komiai summed it up perfectly. It's a change of pace from what we're used to. You mean people are more used to running away and screaming in fear when they see us, Shikaku replied. We usually hear them saying, it's a Biju. We're going to die. After a while, it gets tedious. Then you should stop making sandstorms every time you go near a human town, Saiken told him. Shut up, Saiken. You weren't any better. You'd sneeze and people would scream plague. Do you guys used to compare notes or something? Naruto asked them. This sounded like they did. Or something, Kurama said. The singing stopped, and another 9th tail came to the podium. He was stouter than Shiro, but there was something about him that screamed he used to be a soldier. The more Naruto looked at him, the more he saw that it was how he stood. Before we continue with the mass, we have a special event. We have acolytes who have completed their trails and are ready to be accepted into the fold of our church. One of the doors down below opened and 5 acolytes walked out. They wore white robes and walked with their heads bowed and hands clasped together. If Naruto hadn't known about the church and their hierarchy, he would have assumed these guys were monks. Just as they reached the podium, they came to a stop and sank to their knees. The priest came around the podium with 4 other ninth tails. They stood over the kneeling 5. Acolytes, said the military priest, why have you come to us? We come to seek entrance to the Church of the 9, Priest Eric, they answered together. Have you completed the tasks you have been given? He already said that they had, Isaba said. Why would he be asking that when he knows they have? It's probably for the sake of formality, Gyuki told him. It seemed to be the most obvious answer. We have, the acolytes answered. Eric looked at each of them with intensity in his eyes. Do you swear to uphold the doctrines of this church and stand for what it stands for? Would that be unwanted bigotry against other races and wanting to destroy them? Naruto asked sarcastically. No one answered him. I do, they all said together. Do you swear to serve the faithful of the church? I do. Do you swear to answer the call of our Lord should he ever seek our aid? I do. The ninth tails laid their hands on the acolyte's shoulders. Their hands glow with chakra. Then take on the color of the first tail, and be welcomed into our church. Their white robes darkened at the hands and spread out from there. The color darkened into brown and stayed so, covering all of their robes. When it was done, there wasn't a single trace of white on their robes. They stood up and the entire hall applauded. Naruto listened to their clapping and was a little surprised by the tone of it. It wasn't a fanatical kind of clapping but more celebratory. It was also genuine. The people around him and the priests were all glad to see these acolytes become priests in truth. He realized something else then too. The church might be seen as extreme by the outsider, but they were true and faithful. Guys? He called for his tenants. Kurama asked, what's up, Gaki? How much do you want to bet that not everyone here is a fanatic about crushing the council? None of them answered for a long moment. Then Gyuki spoke. About as much as we would bet money that many of them actually friends who aren't human. Why are you even asking this? Shikaka asked him. He watched the new priest leave the floor. I may have to change what I plan to say to these people. He had planned to rip them all a new one, but if they weren't all fanatics, he couldn't blame them for it. The rest of the mass went on without any more speeches about following him into a war that would bring the council down, something that he was glad for. There was a reading from his book, which surprised him at first, until he figured out it was just a book full of things he had said, more singing and a lot of praying. He had gone down to his knees and back up again so many times his knees were feeling sore. He was also getting a little bored with the whole thing. After that opening speech, things followed more sedately, and it felt really slow for him. And he wasn't the only one. Good Kami, how many times do we have to kneel? Saiken demanded. What's with the we here? His Jinchuriki asked. I'm the one doing all the work. You don't have anything to complain about. We're complaining by association, Sun told the blonde. What? They're standing up again, Matatabi told him. He did too. When the mass finally ended, he sat down in the pew. Ugh, finally, he thought to himself. The calm came to life with Dre's voice. What now? He eyed the rest of the pew. Everyone was getting up and paying no attention to him. He leaned against the pew, resting his head against his hand. Now I go down, he whispered into the calm. What about us? Asked Alec. Follow down as best you can without showing yourselves. Take up positions on the tiers and watch from there. As the tier finally emptied, he watched the other tiers and the floor empty too. He was all alone in the hall. He approached the tier's rail and looked down at the next tier. Gaki, Kurama began, are you? Yeah, I am. If he went back down the stairs and tried to get back in that way, people would notice and get curious. This would be quicker and safer. He gripped the rail in preparation. Don't go overboard and kill yourself. I know that. He shrugged his shoulders and flicked his tails. Well, there are days I doubt it. The blonde ignored him and vaulted over the rail. He landed on the next tier in a roll and came out of it running. He raced across the tier and vaulted over the next rail, down to the next tier. He soared through the air and his mind went back to better days, when he could race across the rooftops of Konoha without a care in the world. Being a shinobi sure did have its perks, one of which was the unconventional routes. His breathing had gotten a bit worked up by the time he reached the ground floor. He waited, letting it settle and get back under control. Told you, he said to the fox. Yeah, what are you going to do next? He looked at the podium, and his eyes slid past it for the door behind it. I want to see what's behind that. He started for it, walking across the stone floor. Commander, we're in positions, Cleas told him over the comm. He didn't say anything back, but he did quickly check. They showed themselves to him for a brief moment. They were in different tiers, like he had asked. He turned back for the door and approached it. Again, he saw how much the wooden door was covered in gold. He was amazed that it didn't fall down from all that gold. He noticed something in the gold. It was obscure, but the more he looked at it, the more he saw it was a handprint. What's that doing there? How the hell should we know? Shikaka demanded. Kurama rolled his eyes. It's called a rhetorical question, you stupid tanuki. Go shove it. Naruto walked over to the door and looked at it more closely. It looked like any other handprint he had seen. Why was it here? Was it supposed to the lock to the door? More importantly, why was the door here? He had seen no one go through it the entire of the mass. Maybe it's chakra-coated, he thought to himself. Hey! A familiar voice shouted from behind him. It was Masato. What are you doing down here? Time for the big reveal? Asked Sun. Not yet. I want to see what's behind this door. He might be able to help me with that. The fox saw a problem with that idea. If you speak, he's going to recognize you. Good point. Lend me a bit of a growl. Huh! I think he's asking you to make his voice deeper, Isabu told him. The QB huffed in irritation. Why doesn't he just say that? Naruto felt a chakra fill his voice box. When it stopped flowing and settled, he spoke. This door, he said. His voice was much deeper than before. It almost sounded like he was growling as he talked. He liked it. Nice work, Fox. Thank you. Yuki rolled his eyes. Stop preening. It's annoying. You can't be down here, Masato told him. Only priests are allowed to stand underneath our Lord's statue. That's not something to be proud of, he thought to himself. This door, he said again. What is behind it? What? Why are you asking that? I am curious. There was a paused moment as he waited for Masato to speak. I don't know, he finally said. No one knows. Then why is it here? Who are you? As I said, curious, the hooded blonde told him. Tell me. He heard Masato sigh in exasperation. According to our legends, what lies behind the door is for the eyes of our Lord. Some people have said that it holds an object that will complete his powers and truly make him a god. Others have said that it holds a book that will grant him infinite knowledge for him to rule the galaxy. And some have said there will be a way to go back to his past. That last one didn't sound so bad to him. He had always that there would be a way for him to go back to his own time. Not that memory walking thing the toads did for him, but actual time travel. How would your lord get in? Supposedly the lock is made from what could be found of his chakra. All he would have to do is place his hand on the lock and the chakra would unlock it for him. Now if that's not an open invitation, I don't know what is, Komiai declared. Naruto heartily agreed. He walked over to the door, ignoring Masato's protests, and placed his hand in the door, channeling his chakra into it. His hand burned blue against the lock. A loud clink echoed in the hall as he felt the door move beneath his hand. He pulled it away and stepped back, watching the door slowly pull itself open, splitting down the middle. Each inch it was pulled open was filled with the sounds of rusted metal groaning against rusted metal. It was a little grating on the ears. The door finally opened and the sound stopped. Naruto couldn't see what lay beyond the door, just darkness. It's not possible, he heard Masato said, sounding shocked at what he had just witnessed. No one should have been able to open that door except. He fell silent. Naruto didn't need to turn around to know that the first tail was staring at him with open shock. Fox, lose the growl, he ordered as he reached up for his hood. The chakra left his voice box. He lowered the hood, letting his blonde spikes pop out of confinement. Masato, he said, his voice back to normal. My lord? Asked Masato. He was unsure of what he was seeing. Call upon your superiors, Naruto ordered. I will have words with them when I come out. Here's hoping one of them isn't that Amida priest, Sun muttered. Don't jinx us, he told the Yambi while Masato ran. That priest was very annoying but also persistent. Guys, stay put, he told the spears. He walked through the door. The first thing he found on the wall was a switch. He flipped it, and the door closed behind him. The next second, the lights came on. He found himself in a small room, about as big as his old bedroom. The only thing in it was a large chest. But he knew that chest. It can't be that chest, he thought to himself. Looks like it, said Kurama. Komi was confused. What are you guys talking about? That chest, the fox indicated with his nose, is Sasuke's. It used to be his toy chest and then it turned into a box where he put everything he cherished. What's it doing here? The last time he had seen it, it was in Sasuke's house. Did the Niners take it from him and stashed it here? A growl bubbled through his throat. If those bastards took this from the Uchiha clan, I'm going to rip them a new one. Along with the rest of the new ones you're going to rip them, Shikaku remarked. Not now. Naruto, breathe, Matatabi told him. You don't know how it got here. Why don't you look inside? He walked over to it and knelt down. It was unlocked and actually looked like it was in good condition. Given it was over 2,000 years old, that was definitely saying something. His eyes found something carved into the chest, low enough to be carved by a child on his stomach. This is Sasuke Uchiha's. He read to himself. No one touch it. He smiled. Sasuke was different back when he was a kid. He opened it and looked in it. What was inside was something that he hadn't seen in the longest time. Videotapes? He said in silent surprise. There were 2 rows of videotapes, stacked from end to end. Each had a date written on them. On the top was an envelope. He took it. It was blank on one side, but when he flipped around, he saw it was sealed with the emblem of the Kazekage. What's this? Said Shikaku. Why is that here? I don't know, but I'm about to find out. He broke the seal and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, written in Gaara's handwriting. Naruto, I don't know when you'll be reading this. It's most likely that I'll be dead when you do. As I write this, Sakura and I are the only ones who are still alive. I find myself growing more tired with each passing day. But before I go, I want to make sure that you know that there is something for you when you wake up. There's a group of people who research you and everything you did. They even researched me and my Jinchuriki predecessors. They will take this gift and put it in a safe place. This is something that we've all been doing since you left. It reads much differently than saying it. Someone else would read this letter and think that you've gone somewhere and will come back in this lifetime. Sakura or I would read this and know that you won't be back while we're still alive. But left is the only words we can use. You didn't die, vanish, or disappear. You left. Sorry, my mind wandered there for a moment. It's been happening a lot. It's a good thing that I retired from being the Kazekage. Anyway, inside the trunk is something that we've been doing over the years. It started as a way to remember you and it just kept going. When you watch these videos, I hope you'll know that we miss you and that we love you. Wherever you are out there, I hope that you are well and that you are out of that damn rock. We all missed you. Gaara. He reread the letter once, then twice, then 3 times. He didn't stop reading until he practically memorized each word. I'm sorry, Gaara, he said quietly. I'm sorry that I didn't come back when I should have. He mentally kicked himself for his hasty actions at the end. He should have checked the seal when he was done. If he had, he would have seen the mistake. He could have corrected it. Naruto, listen to me, Kurama told him. What? What happened, happened. Get over it. He didn't say that to be mean. He said it so that Naruto wouldn't start blaming himself. The fox had had enough of that during the war. He was not going through it again. While he didn't exactly agree with the way he said it, Saiken agreed with Kurama. Why don't you take a look at the tapes? The slug suggested. It was a good idea. Naruto folded the letter and tucked it away. He picked one of the tapes and looked at the date. It's my birthday, he told them, 7 years after the war. What about the others? Isabu asked. He quickly scanned them. Each date had the same thing in common. They were all on his birthday. The only thing that changed was the year. Were they celebrating my birthday for me? I don't know, but I do know it's going to be hard to watch these without a VCR, Komi said. And considering that it's been 2,000 years, I don't think anyone uses them anymore. I see a bigger problem, Shikaku commented. How the hell is he going to lug that out without anyone noticing? The rest of the Biju all scoffed at that. That's easy, Matatabi told the Tanuki. Really? He asked back. Naruto could see it the same way. He was actually surprised that Shikaku didn't pick up on it. Yeah, there is, he agreed. Well, what is it? Sealing jutsu, the other 8 tenants said, all at the same time. Oh, right. I'm just going to shut up now. Kurama could have celebrated at that. And thank the old man for it, he declared. Shikaku glared at him, and he grinned smugly back. Naruto rolled his eyes at their antics. Girls, relax. You are both beautiful. You want to repeat that, Gaki? Why? Clearly you heard it. Naruto, said Gyuki, sounding bored with the conversation, get to work already. He pulled out a scroll, laid it out on the ground, and opened it up. He opened the ends of the bar, pulled out the brush, and dipped it into the inkwell on the other end. With a speed that came from experience and practice, he drew out the ceiling characters. Once it was all drawn, he put the brush away and closed the well. He went over to the chest and considered his options. He could drag it onto the seal, but that ran the risk of tearing the paper. If that happened, he would have to start all over again. He could do that, but it was the principle of the thing. It also got annoying. The other way would be to just simply lift it up and place it down. He just didn't know how heavy the chest was going to be. He wouldn't know until he tried. So he bent down and grabbed the ends. Once he got it up in the air, he found that the chest wasn't as heavy as he thought. He placed it down on the paper, right over the characters. He knelt down, touched one hand to the paper and folded the other into a seal. He sealed the chest full of tapes away and then rolled up the scroll, putting it in his pocket. And now, he thought as he stood up, time to face the music. Oh, like you're not looking forward to this, Sun said, knowing full well that he was. They all were. He could admit to that. Alec, he said into the calm. Yes, Commander? The spear asked back. What does it look like out there? Whatever you said to the kid, it made him run out and get the 9th tails. They're all out there? All 9 of them, plus the kid, he answered. Perfect. You wanted that to happen? Dre asked. Yes. Why? He grinned a little to himself. Just get ready for a show. If they weren't Niners, he was sure they were going to love what came next. Hey, I just had an idea, Isaba said. Naruto was a little irritated by that. Here he was about to descend upon the church's higher-ups and Isabu was stopping him. Can this wait? The turtle shook his head. No, it can't. Actually, it's about what's coming next. What about it? If this is going to be a show, why don't you add a little something to it? Saiken caught what Isabu was implying and quickly began nodding in agreement. Oh yeah, that would definitely add to the effect. Nice thinking, Isabu. The others started catching on and agreed with the sentiment. It'll certainly make it more intimidating for them, Sun remarked. And that's going to be fun, Shikaku declared. Kurama grinned evilly. Yes, it will be. What do you guys have in mind? Asked Naruto. They all answered, Rinnegan. He thought about it for a moment, and then grinned just as evilly as Kurama. One could say those grins were identical. I approve. When the door opened again and he stepped out, his eyes were ringed and purple. Masato was outside, along with the 9th tails. Their looks of irritated disbelief faded into stunned wonder when they saw him. They probably didn't believe what Masato had told them until now. My lord, Shiro said, coming forward. He bowed so low that his forehead touched the floor. How gloriously it is to see you. If he starts kissing your feet, I'm going to throw up, Shikaku declared. Sun nodded. Same here, he said. I'm with you guys on that, Naruto told them. He noticed how the others were bowing like Shiro. Normally he would have tried to make them stop it, but he had to play the part of what they thought he was. He let go on for another minute before he spoke. Stand, he commanded. They did as he bid. My lord, Shiro said. He seemed to be the spokesperson of the group. Why did you not announce that you were coming? We would not have let you come like one of the masses. It is through the eyes of the masses that one sees the world, he replied. He spoke with an imperious tone. It was something that he felt would work with these people. So far, it wasn't disappointing him. I wish to see this church, this religion, which has been raised up in my name. If I had announced myself, I would not see what others see of it. Shiro bowed his head. Of course, my lord, he said. He raised his head and looked at Naruto. There was something in his eyes that told the blonde he was planning something. It seemed like Shiro was more than just a priest. If anything, he seemed almost like businessman. We have heard of your battle on the moon. Kurama scoffed. At this point, who hasn't heard of that? His Jinchuriki agreed with the sentiment. Still, he had to go with it. You did well to send people to keep me safeguarded, he said. Even if I did not remember calling you, You did right by me. It wasn't enough, the military priest said with a hard frown. There is no point in arguing about it, Kenji, Shiro rebuked him. What has happened has happened. Our Lord has defeated the black chakra of the Jubi. Indeed, said Naruto. But in truth, I was tempted to let it win and consume me. They were all thunderstruck at that proclamation. He could have laughed at how shocked they were. My lord? Said Shiro. Are you kidding? No, Shiro. I am not kidding. He looked like he was trying to form the right words since the ones he had weren't going to work. Why? He finally asked. I've seen a lot of the galaxy since I was unsealed. What I've seen upsets me. I thought that the troubles that plague my home and the elemental countries would be at the very least resolved. Instead, they've grown. In fact, they've spread out the entire galaxy. People hate other for what they are, look down at them because they think they're better, or judge them as a whole rather than a person. There is barely enough trust to be given. Instead, there is heavy suspicion. I've seen people think they are own something because they've done one thing. I've watched good men and women do what they can to support their families, only to be spat and cursed at by those families that only more, and more. The priests all nodded sympathetically. It is truly a sad thing, Lord Naruto, Shiro agreed. He threw his hardest glare at the ninth tail. Don't give me that, Shiro! He growled loudly. The Church of the Nine is just as guilty for what I've described as anyone else. Shiro looked surprised at the accusation, but he could see that it was faked, at least partially. My lord, that is not true, the priest protested. Is it? Yes. Then you are a liar, Shiro. What I've described is what this church has done. I was here for your sermon. I heard your words. You would have me at the forefront of a wave that would crush all those who weren't human. You use my name to justify the idea that humans should rule the galaxy, perhaps even the universe. You treat your sibling religion, the Church of the Traveler's Road, like scum that needs to be extinguished. They are heretical. How can they be, when I founded them too? The priest did not say anything. Naruto looked at them all with disappointed look. This is not the future I had hoped to find. My lord, said the military priest, if I may? He turned his gaze onto him. Speak, Kenji. With all due respect, my lord, you weren't there on Shanxi. He looked his lord in the eyes. I was. I fought on the ground alongside General Williams. When he led the charge to drive them off the planet, I followed him. We had them, and the Alliance signed a treaty with the Council, stopping all the fighting. We should have been happy with that, I know. But there were dead bodies on the planet, even children. Shanxi was a planet that our church was fully established on. They were our people. What's more, even though the Turians were the ones who attacked, the rest of the galaxy saw us as in the wrong. They thought us too aggressive for breaking laws that we knew nothing about. No matter how many times we told them we didn't know those rules, still they looked down at us. How about that? Said Shikaku. A niner actually made a point. When I know how to fight, Naruto replied. That has happened. I will not doubt or argue it. A mark of a good man is when he acknowledges that something has angered him. But it is the mark of a great man when he is able to move past it. I do not ignore your military service, Kenji, and I know you have a grievance against the Council. But you need not inflict it upon the rest of the church. The Council will not be brought to heel. They are here. We have to live with them. He looked at Shiro. And you wondered why I was tempted to cause the galaxy to burn? He asked mockingly. Then why didn't you? He asked back, before tacking on, my lord. The blonde turned his ringed eyes upon them all. Because I was reminded that for all the evil I had seen in the galaxy, there are still people in it who try to be good people and do the right thing. I will not doom them to death for what others have done. This church shall do the same. There will be no holy war against the Council, not now, not ever. That is my command. They all said nothing. He saw the doubt in their eyes. He had just upset their preconceived notion about him, and they didn't like it. He had a feeling that as soon as he left, they would denounce what he said and kept it to themselves. He needed to do something to drive it home. And he knew what to do. Masato! He barked out suddenly. The kid flinched at being called out like that. Why yes, my lord? He squeaked. Are you a member of my church? He was confused but still answered. Yes. What I say you will do. Well, that is a yes or no question. First tail. He snapped, making the kid flinch again. He wasn't going to answer. There was an easier way to find what he wanted. He pulled out a kunai and tossed it to the kid's feet. "Take that," he said, "and kill Priest Shiro." Masato's eyes were so wide, they nearly popped out of his head. What? "Kill Shiro," he said again. "He has slandered me, used my name to give false dreams to the masses, and incited them to cause war upon people who do not deserve. Take that kunai and end his life, now." He looked down at the kunai, and then at the ninth tail. His hand trembled as he picked up the kunai. It was so bad that the weapon was actually shaking. But he looked again at the priest and saw something that steadied him. He looked back at his lord and god and said, "No." "No?" Naruto repeated. He shook his head. "No." "Do it, first tail Masato," Shiro commanded him. "I will not. Our lord has given you a command. Obey it." He pulled open his robe so that his chest could be seen. But Masato shook his head even harder. "No, I won't do it. If you refuse to obey our lord, you shall be stripped of your robe. Strike me, first tail Masato. End my life." "Geez, this guy really does have a hard-on for obeying your every whim and wish," Sun commented. "Either that or he's got a plan to make Naruto look like a murderer," Matatabi said. "There is that." "It's not going to happen," Naruto told them. He knew what would happen next. Masato threw down the kunai. "No, I will not. I won't kill you, Priest Shiro." Shiro looked at him with angered eye. He closed his robe and looked at the other priests. "My fellow ninth tails, you have seen what has just happened. He refused an order from our lord when it was most clear. Strip him of his robe." The other priests gathered around Masato. Two grabbed him by the arms while the others ripped off the robe. He was left to stand in his underwear, his robe laid tattered at his feet. There was a look of utter anguish on his face, tears forming in his eyes. He lost strength in his legs and collapsed to the ground. "Now what?" said Kurama. "Now this," Naruto replied, coming forward. "Fox, at my signal, I need the chakra cloak." "What's the signal?" "I'll tell you." He approached the man on the floor. The ninth tails looked as if they were to do more, but they moved out of the way as he approached. If he listened, he could hear tears being cried. "Masato," he said. The kid stopped crying. "Why didn't you kill him like I commanded?" "It was wrong." He looked up at him. His eyes were trying to understand why he would ask that question. "I told you already that I wanted to do right. I could not kill Priest Shiro, even if he had done such things. It would not have been the right thing to do." "I see. Then there is only one thing left to do." He hung his head. "What else is there?" Naruto reached for the clasp holding his cloak up. "Now," he told Kurama as he undid the clasp. The fox grinned. "You got it." As soon as the cloak came off his shoulders, he was engulfed in the Bijus chakra. It formed itself around his body, and the air was flooded itself with the chakra's presence. He took a small pleasure in how the ninth tails were taken aback by the sudden change. But he didn't pay them any attention. Instead, he knelt down and placed the cloak on Masato's shoulders. "Stand," he commanded, rising up. "What?" "Stand, Masato of the 10th tail." He held out his hand to the shocked kid. "Stand, my heart," he told him. "Is anyone else glad we have the context here?" Saiken asked. "Shut up," the blonde told the Kabutomushi. Masato was stunned, but he still took the offered hand. He came back up to his feet. The cloak nearly fell off his shoulders, but he managed to keep it on. "I don't understand." "We don't either," said Kenji. The other ninth tails looked just as confused and surprised. Naruto looked at them all. "I told you that I had been to the mass and heard the words. You all questioned the reality of the 10th tail. This is my answer. I have anointed one before Masato, my sister, as a priestess of the 10th tail. I declared her to be my herald, my voice. She speaks with my authority in the galaxy. Here and now, I have made another a 10th tail. Masato here is my heart, the truth of what I am. He reminded me of why I should not damn the galaxy. Above all else, I tried to do the right thing." Shiro didn't know what to say. He had always thought that the talks of a 10th tail were just that, talks. But now he was being told that it was the truth, by his lord no less. It felt like he was being shifted from the highest authority to second place. Was their authority being changed? "Is he above us, my lord?" he dared to ask. Naruto paused. It was a good question, one that could have long-lasting consequences. He would have to be careful. If he said yes, then the church would be thrown into chaos and would probably destroy itself, figuring what would happen next. A lot of people would probably think it would be for the best and tell him to let it happen, but he wasn't like that cruel. A lot of people would be hurt in the process if that happened. He would not let that happen. On the other hand, if he said no, the church would disregard Masato and Ruko. Perhaps they would even try to have them killed so to prevent any challenge to their authority. That was something he would not let happen. He would have to compromise. For now, they stand outside your authority, he told the ninth tail. They answer to me and me only until I see fit to change it. He looked to the kid and said, Masato, I have a task for you. The new 10th tail bowed his head. What is you ask of me, my lord? I ask you to go out to the galaxy and seek out the travelers. Speak to them, tell them that you act in my authority if they will take it, and let them know that there will be no further prosecutions from this church. You will find them, you will offer them aid, and you will tell them that there is peace between you two. Masato did not argue or question. He raised his head and said, It shall be as you say. Good. He walked past them all, heading for the door. He remembered something else and came to a complete stop. And another thing, he said without turning around. Get rid of those statues outside. There was a paused silence on their end. Which statues are you talking about, my lord? Shiro dared to finally ask. You know which ones? Get rid of them. But they'd been there for over 200 years. They were made to honor you. They missed. The sight of them offends me. He didn't wait for their reply. If they truly believed him to be a god on this planet, they would obey his command. As he walked out of the hall, he heard Dre over the calm dam. I am so glad this is recorded. I don't think I've ever seen the Niners get so dressed down. As soon as Naruto was through the door, he deactivated the chakra cloak. Don't stay up there, he whispered into the calm. We're done here. It's time to head back. They didn't say anything in reply. When he left the church, he saw how they were in the crowd, following him out. Naruto sat in the mess hall at a table full of people. It had been a day since he came back from the land of waves, and already people were hearing about what he had done. They tried hounding him about it, but both he and General Ramos put their foot down on it. They let it known that Naruto would only talk about it at lunch, and it would be first come first serve in seating. That probably the first time he ever saw a fight in a mess hall that didn't involve food. As he finished regaling the people sitting around with what happened at the church, they all busted out laughing. You really did that? Asked a cowboy who held onto the table so he wouldn't fall down. His hat was tipped rather precariously on his head. Yep, said Naruto unashamedly. He watched them all and smiled. He was glad that he could make them laugh. That's great, he declared, still laughing. Thank you? As the laughter died down, someone else asked, What did you do after that? His smile faded as he turned sad. I wandered around the city, trying to see if I could find anything that I could find, he told them all. The laughter in their eyes faded away some when they realized just what he was saying. It had been over 2,000 years since he had last been there. Did you find anything? One of the civilians dared to ask him. He looked at who asked the question. It was a woman who looked like she was a secretary. Only the bridge, he told her. Everything else had been taken down and replaced by something else. It had been saddening to see. She must have seen the sadness in his eyes, for she said, I'm sorry. What are you sorry for? He asked her. You did not cause me any grief. Someone was going to ask me that question. The doors to the mess hall banged open. Where is he? A man's voice demanded. Where is Naruto Uzumaki? The blonde in question looked at the doors and saw a dark-haired man coming towards him. It took him a second to realize that he had seen this man before, in a photo outside General Ramos's office. That must be Ian. What are you going to do? Isabel asked him. Ian was getting closer and was walking with a determined step. He stood up from the table and walked away from it, giving everyone who had been sitting there some space. They didn't need to be involved in what might happen next. Over here, he called out to Ian. You're looking for me? As soon as he saw the blonde, Ian marched over to him. Naruto readied himself for some kind of an attack. He hadn't been prepared for the bear hug. I don't know what you said to my wife, Ian told him, but thank you for making me one of the luckiest guys on this island. It took him a moment to figure out what that meant. I guess Sarah went with the threesome option. A little surprising, he could admit to that, But if it made her happy with her husband, he wasn't going to protest. "So, is everything all right?" he asked the man. "It is now," Ian said. "We all enjoyed it so much that Sarah would love to have Megan around again." He stopped the bear hug and looked at everyone. "This man is a god," he declared, pointing at Naruto. "That's already established," someone shouted back at him. While a lot of people laughed at that, a lot more were looking at the blonde with a curious eye, trying to figure out just what he had done for Ian. He saw the looks and a feeling that he was about to get a lot more questions, none of which had to do with the Land of Waves. Codex Entry: Humanity and the Systems Alliance Midgardian Valkyries. The Valkyrie was a shield maiden, shield maiden, of Odin who led those mortals that fell in battle to the halls of Valhalla to become Einherjar. At first, medicine was practiced in Midgard solely by shamans and priests with a combination of chants and herbs. However, with advanced medical technologies being introduced to the lands, the practice of healing became as much a religion practice as it was a science. It all started when Ira, daughter of the High Jarl, went to Sakura Haruno to become her student in the medical arts, effectively becoming the first modern Valkyrie, and forming her own unit of dedicated combat medics. Since then, the predominantly female Valkyries have played an increasingly more active role in the Midgardian armed forces, both as soldier and healer. In addition to their combat as Einherjar, Valkyries are taught the art of healing in all its forms. While some decry the Valkyries as true doctors for their capability of taking a life, it is easily argued that when trying to save the life of a patient, protecting them at all costs is a priority. This dedication to saving patients is the reason why Valkyries joined the Systems Alliance Marines. They are not afraid to take a life to save a life, and so they are often seen in many conflict zones and battlefields helping the wounded and improving public opinion of the Marines. In terms of equipment, all Valkyries are given the same weapons and gear as their fellow Einherjar. As such, they are rated to wear any powered exoskeleton to fit the situation. In addition to their regular gear, they also carry a satchel of medicines and medigel, as well as a book of runic seals to aid in healing. In addition to healing implements, all Valkyries are also issued the notorious Odin's Welcome, a neurotoxin cocktail so strong that it is reportedly capable of painlessly killing a Krogan within 20 seconds. When asked why such a horrid thing was necessary in a Valkyrie's kit, the answer is for when all hope is lost, and the only freedom for a patient is a quick and painless death. Thus, Valkyries are the only unit in the Marines allowed to perform euthanasia with permission from the patient, and with witnesses to confirm that there was no other way.